This is the Cafe con Podcast.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
You got
awesome.
this. You got the chivito going off. I like it too.
Yeah, dude.
Let me see. Come
It's
up
not
closer.
bad.
Let me see. Come up closer to the camera.
Let me take the blurry out.
I like it a lot, bro.
Yeah.
Yo,
I mean, you know why I kept it. You know why I kept it. You're not the only one.
For the kitty, for the kitties. You got to get it for the kitties, bro. I wish you could see my background. Let me see if I move away. If you see it.
You're in a hotel right now. Let me put myself in mono. There we go. Can't play myself. I gotta change the background again. Hold on 1 second.
Look at that.
What is that? Yosemite?
Yeah.
What?
I'm trying to make it darker. How do I not make it
like that? Wow. I miss it.
Yeah, bro. Yo, I think, we were talking about Riverside. I think that that's a good thing about Riverside is that the visual component of it is a lot cleaner.
A lot.
So
a lot.
yeah. So I mean, I'm recording right now on my cell phone as well. I have my cell phone set up.
I sound more dim now, right? Compared to now. Testing 1 2, 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 testing 1 2.
It all sounds the same.
Okay, it's probably just like what I'm hearing.
It all sounds the same.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the pad off. Let me get the cafecito. I'll be right back upstairs.
All right.
Right back.
Yeah. So since we're already recording, I want to kind of do this for the first time. I've never done this before, but this is what I'm drinking. For anybody, it's a little backwards. It's a little backwards. But it's Three Sisters, or it's Kicking Horse Coffee, and it's Three Sisters is the type of Kicking Horse coffee, and it's pretty flame. So I drink that pretty much. That's like my go-to every morning coffee is Kicking Horse Coffee, Three Sisters, and it's fire. I love it. French press. I'm in Yosemite right now, so go for it, Don. My guy.
What's up, guys? Good morning.
Good morning, bro.
Thanks for having me on.
You're good, dude. You're good. Thanks
for
coming on. Pretty good, bro. Just getting going. Just enjoying the nice nature. Let me look, bro. You guys see where I am. I'm gonna step away from my camera so you can see. Check this out.
All right, let's check it out.
Wait for it.
Wow, that's nice. Is that a campfire in the back?
They just have a bunch of wood chopped up. But there's no we haven't done a fire yet in the cabin. We got in yesterday to this cabin. We moved.
What's up, Julian?
We moved.
Morning, George. Is it George or George Michael?
It's either or. It's Michael George Michael.
George Michael.
Anything. I'm gonna grab my coffee. I'll be right back. All right.
Go for it.
We'll chop it up. It's getting brewed. Homemade brew.
Go get the homemade brew. Yeah, dude. You'll see. It's like I was telling you earlier. It's super chill. This is kind of the whole vibe of this. We don't want it to be anything more than it is. We don't want it to be anything less than it is. This is just really to satisfy just having intentional conversations with people, man.
Right on.
Sometimes, life gets a little crazy and you don't sit down and listen and talk to people. How you doing, man? How's your day going?
I'm good. Just having my cafecito.
Yeah? What are you drinking? Cheers. Cheers to you. George is coming. We'll do a double cheers again when he comes back up. But cheers to you, my guy.
Always.
Colombian coffee? Is that what you said? You're drinking Colombian coffee?
Colombian coffee always.
Oh my God, bro. The Colombians have good caffeine, if you want to call it that. Both good.
I'm half Colombian, so.
Are you? I figured, dude. When you were like cafecito, I was like, I figured. So what's your other half? You're half Colombian, and what else? What else are you?
My dad's from Kashmir, so like the disputed territory between India and Pakistan, which is cool because I get to be friends with both sides. But yeah, so half Colombian and half from there.
Dude, that is an incredible mix that you have. Kashmir. I don't know if I've ever met anybody that is, I don't even know how to say it. Kashmir, I guess. How would you say somebody from Kashmir? What's the proper way to say somebody from Kashmir?
My guess would be Kashmiri.
Yeah, I've never met somebody that's Kashmiri. I was going to say Kashmiran, but that's probably not right. So
your guess is as good as mine.
I was like, that's so interesting, man. Wow, dude, did you grow up in California?
No, I grew up in Houston, Texas, born and
Oh
raised. I'm a
shit!
Texan.
I didn't know that. That's why you got that larger than life personality.
From
That makes
H-Town.
the H-Town stand up, Houston, Atlanta, Vegas. That makes a lot of sense, dude. That's
I know my home team, the Astros, are not too popular here, but
I mean, I'll be honest, bro. I'm a Dusty Baker fan, so I think Dusty deserved to get a World Series. I think that he's kind of helped turn the narrative of the Astros around. But I was born and raised in Miami, and my grandfather was the one that showed me baseball, and he was a Marlins and Yankees fan. So
okay.
I'm a Marlins and Yankees fan. It's funny because I went to the World Series when the Marlins played the Yankees, and that was really awesome. When I was a kid, I went with my grandfather and my brother-in-law. But yeah, dude. So the Astros I mean, cheating in any sport, is not a great thing.
Nope.
I will say I think it's a lot more widespread than there's a lot of things like in all types of sports. Do you watch basketball? Are you a basketball fan at
I
all?
do not, even though
Okay.
my sister, as you know, like works for the.
Oof. I
But
was gonna get into that in a little bit when George got back to talk about that. But even in basketball, dude, there's like little things within the game of basketball that is like it's like cheating, but it's considered acceptable cheating. Like for instance,
flopping.
yeah, well, flopping, but other things like I was just thinking about certain things that other players would do, which is like untie players' shoes when you're at the free throw line. Like when you're getting a rebound, some players will literally untie somebody's shoes or like pull their pants down a little bit. So it's like little what's the word I'm looking for? They're aggressors, essentially, right? They aggravate the other team and just things of that nature. They give you like a little elbow here and there when when they know it's going to go into your ribs and stuff like that. So I mean, I don't know if I'd consider that cheating as much as I would consider it within the confines of the rules, but I feel like with baseball, when you're stealing signs, that's something different. But when you're able to, when you notice something on as a team and like you tell your players, hey, watch when he tucks his elbow in, whatever, that's the curveball coming. I think that's acceptable cheating, essentially. I don't know if I'd call it cheating, but you know what I'm saying? Those are like
Yeah, dude.
acceptable things that happen within the realm of the constraints and rules of those sports that I
I
think
mean,
are good.
cheating's pretty rampant in all professional sports. I mean, in the MMA jiu-jitsu world now, it's like people are getting popped for steroids, and it's kind of like we've always known, and
Right.
it's always understood, and people thought of it, but now it's like people are getting popped, and
Bro, the other crazy thing to me about MMA and that whole world is the weight cutting. That,
oh, it's the worst.
bro,
The worst.
that is like brutal. That blows my mind. I was watching this thing with Dustin Poirier the other day that he took some fight on a few weeks notice. This is a while ago when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was talking about how his walking around weight is 190, and they called him and they were like, hey, we need you to fight, I forget, in 3 weeks or something like that. And they said, how much do you weigh? And he's like, oh, I'm like at 174. And he was
You
at
lied to them,
one,
right?
yeah, and he was at 186, and he was fighting at 145. So he
Yeah,
literally had to cut 40 to 45 pounds of weight.
In
that's
a month.
insane.
Yeah.
Bro, that is like
You feel weird.
cheers now
Yeah.
the
Sorry,
three
sorry it took so
cheers.
long.
The
Cheers,
three
boys.
cheers. Toma, cafecito.
Instead of sugar, I put honey. My mom was like recommending the day. She's like, put honey. So
Bro, I've been starting to put creatine in my
for real,
coffee.
that's
Yeah,
like you're
yeah.
supposed to do that. You're supposed to do that.
I've been doing
My
creatine.
trainer John does that. Shout
Yeah.
out to John.
Bro, Julian is half Colombian, bro. I didn't even
Really,
know
Julian?
that.
I am.
So tell us more about yourself. Like you were born in. I mean,
Well,
you gave us kind of the bio and everything.
yeah,
I'm Texan.
yeah.
I'm Texan.
Okay.
born and
Yeah, I
raised.
saw that.
My entire Colombian side's there. And then I went to school in St. Louis, Missouri. And so
Okay.
like naturally like a Cards fan too.
Yeah.
And when I was at school there, the Cards were playing the Astros. That was like the main rivalry. And I
Yeah.
remember Pujols hitting like a grand slam at the end of the game, and like St. Louis was just going mad, and like Astros fans were like, "Oh shit, this is the worst."
He-
So yeah, Astros
That's
and
dope.
teams.
kind of sidebar on that. So my family's from Chicago, but both those sides of my family are Colombian.
Oh,
And my parents met in Chicago though, and my grandfather is actually a Cardinals fan because growing up in Chicago, like living in Chicago, you find Cardinals fans because the Cubs were always trash. So and it's like one of the closest, not one of the closest teams to Chicago, but it's fairly like St. Louis, Missouri is just probably like an hour or two flight away. Obviously, it's a long drive, but it border Illinois, the southern part of
yeah,
Illinois.
yeah.
Yeah,
In St. Louis, we used to just go across the river and party because in
yeah,
Illinois, there's a 24-hour liquor license.
yeah.
And so we would party all night in St. Louis, drive across the river, and then hit after hours till
Yeah.
10 a.m.
St. Louis and Illinois really have like, I mean, they're also obviously like boarding states, but they have like a very unique relationship with each other. I feel like culturally.
Yeah. The Midwest is very different
Yeah.
compared to the rest of the country. I mean, the Midwest, there's basements and like
Yep.
people like DJ decks and like subs and like speakers down there, and then you could just bang it out and just mix and party. And it sounds like a club because of the way
Yep.
it.
That's the birthplace of house, Chicago and Detroit.
Oh, yeah, dude, Chicago House is the best.
Yeah, that's why they called it house because it started in like underground, like or in attics and stuff. Yeah,
I
that's why
didn't know.
I
I didn't know that.
from my knowledge, I could be wrong. Sorry for all the avid house lovers out there, but that's why I call it house music because it started with just like house parties and being like in the basement and just that sound of just like you could hear it from upstairs or from like a neighbor or things like that. But it obviously stemmed from like disco and all that. But that's a whole nother realm. Yeah, but I read your bio and stuff. What you sent us. I definitely just like to ask anyways for people watching. But I saw you're from Houston. Where in Colombia is your family from?
They're from Bogota.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I have some family there actually. My dad has a cousin there.
That's nice. Have
Let's
you been?
go. I went when I was really young, so I don't remember much about it. But I've been to Colombia like hundreds of times, not hundreds, but like a lot of times. And it's usually just like Medellin though, because that's where my dad's from.
Okay. Yeah, I'm one in my entire family that has not gone.
Yeah, really?
Yeah,
Dude,
my
you gotta
sister,
go,
my mom,
man.
my grandparents, they went I think 4 years ago, but I was working
Okay.
on a movie, so I didn't get to go.
You gotta go, man. You gotta go. It's in your
work on
bones. It's in your bones. You gotta go and experience it. I love it. I love it for sure. I mean, me being biased, I feel like it's one of the best places on earth, especially like Medellin, because my dad's from there. My mom's from Cali, but we don't usually go to Cali. We usually always just go to Medellin. And my sister actually got married in Cartagena a couple of years ago, so we spent a whole week there. That was amazing. But
That's
One of the biggest regrets of my life was not going to that.
hey, man, it was a weird time. It was a very weird time. But I'll probably get married there too, so don't worry about it.
Perfect.
I had such a great time. I was telling everybody I need to get married just like this, the exact same way. There's nothing
It
different.
looked so beautiful. Julian, do you speak Spanish?
un poquito. It was my first language, and around age 8, it switched to English.
Same.
And today I only speak it with my grandparents, so I've lost it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I lost being a fluent native speaker, but I'd like to pick it back up again. But yeah, like I said, I only speak to my grandparents in Spanish.
Your grandparents are still around?
Yes.
God bless that, bro. Cherish that.
Yeah, cherish that, man. Yeah, we both lost some of our grandparents recently, so it's very new to like not have that person there anymore. You know, to make sopita or just to talk about old times
and talk in Spanish, bro, because that's how it was with my grandmother too. I would only speak to her in Spanish. And yeah, dude, that's one of those things that's like you don't realize it because I was the same way. My first language was English, and then I went to school, and in school my first language was Spanish. And then I started speaking English in school and whatever, but I would only speak Spanish to my grandparents. And then once they're gone, it's like I never spoke it at home with my parents. So, you know, I only speak it to people who only speak Spanish, which are, you know, few and far between now because everybody in my family speaks English. So it's one of those things that you don't even realize until it's gone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Everything's cyclical though, like Isaac says. I take a lot of gems, like those special words you say, Isaac, like very cyclical. That one in particular, because my niece she's about 15, 16 months old now. And we speak to her in Spanish. So she's kind of filled that void of my grandma passing away because she passed away recently. So we speak to her, so she can learn Spanish as kind of her first language. But obviously, the same thing's gonna happen probably when she gets to school. It's gonna flip flop. But I just thought of that now. It's just very interesting how, like one generation has left this realm we're in, and then there's a new one now. And it was cool that she got to interact with her great grandmother, even though she's probably not gonna remember much. She's not gonna remember anything actually, but just to see, yeah, just this, that cycle of just there's a new generation, and then another one leaves this earth, but like leaves all of this family, and it's such a beautiful thing, and that we can carry some traditions as much as we can, even though we're pretty Americanized at this point, but yeah, I think it's something we all need to hold near and dear to us, that Hispanic culture, not to bring like ethnicity into it, but just
any culture, bro.
Any culture. And we both, and we all three of us come from very rich cultures, very, very rich cultures. Like Cuban culture is so rich, and so is Colombian, that it's very hard to even let it go in a sense. So that's why I like to keep it near and dear, because it holds a lot of value, especially in our family.
Bro, and his pops, Julian's dad, is from Kashmir. Exactly. My response exactly. When he told me that, I was like, that is unreal. That's awesome. Which is Kashmir is, what did you say? It's the contested territory in between Pakistan and India.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was raised in the UAE, and then he was
Okay.
over to boarding school to Canada. And so I'm actually half Canadian.
Wow. What a journey.
Oh,
so what
that's
do you
right.
consider yourself besides Colombian then? You're Colombian, and what else? What would you consider yourself?
Kashmiri, if that's how it's pronounced.
I saw you saying you're trying to get your Colombian or your Canadian citizenship, right?
Yeah, well, I'm naturally inclined to having it as a dual by birth, but I never pulled the trigger. So that's something I'm working on now.
How long were you there for?
Sorry?
How long were you there for?
Where?
In Canada. Or are you just getting it because of your dad?
I used to play ice hockey in Canada growing up.
Oh, man.
Let's go Panthers. Let's go Panthers.
Sorry, Toronto. Sorry, Toronto. Where in Canada are you from? Don't say Toronto. Hopefully, I heard it's a great city.
My dad lived in Montreal.
Okay, because I didn't want to kick dirt in your face since we just beat them. So
I used to play hockey in Quebec and in British Columbia as a kid.
Dude, hockey is a grueling sport, man. Like every time I watch that in MMA, I tip my hat. Obviously football too, but those two sports is just.
Bro, and I was a goalie.
Whoa.
Oh, you're a different breed.
No, I started at age 6. It was I watched the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, Flying V.
Hell yeah. And then I got into roller hockey for a year, and I was a goalie on that.
Nice.
And then I got into ice hockey at age 7.
Wow.
And I played defense for just a very short time. And then I got put in the goal, and then it turned out to be that like being an ice hockey goalie is probably the best skill I've ever had. I was probably better at ice hockey than I'm at anything else.
Wow.
And I played AAA all over Canada. And
wow.
I went to like the top camps in North America, and I was always placed like #1 in the rankings. As a
what?
I played an age group up. So I was 12 playing with 14, 14 playing with 16, 16 playing with 18.
You must be real flexible then, right? Because I always see the hockey saves that the goalies make.
You're not
ridiculous.
Dude, I am notorious for 2 things when I was growing up and playing hockey. I never stretched, and I never put effort in practice. But when it came time to game time,
you're a gamer. Yeah, you're a gamer.
I love that word.
Save average. It was like I would pull off 6, 7 rebounds. I'd have like 90 shots on goal sometimes and let in 2.
Wow.
You're a ball player.
And I'd get scouted out for tournaments above my age group. It was wild.
That was always the case for me in soccer. Like the guys that didn't stretch or did nothing were the most lethal in the field.
Dude, it was so bad. Like sometimes I got laid.
It is what it is.
During practice. It was so bad.
It's like basketball. I feel like that's the same thing that I've noticed with basketball players. Like some of them, you just know that some are hoopers, some are just gamers. They don't stretch, they don't warm up, they don't shoot, and they start to play, bro. And these dudes are fucking balling.
One with the ball.
Dude, and so like that was me to the point where I was never worried about losing my spot, and I would spend my time training my backup goalie so that when he got put in, we wouldn't lose.
Whoa. Bro, what kind of things do you think that hockey taught you that you've carried forward in life?
So
Great
really
question.
important. So I think that like growing up, we should all play team sports.
Yeah, I agree.
Because like in school, we're taught
Amen.
to do our own solo projects, but in the real world, everything is a group project. And so you have to learn how to work like a team. And you can't focus on just being the best. You have to bring up everyone around you.
Mm.
So, especially as a goalie, it's like you're the backbone of the team
Mm-hmm.
and you are on the ice the entire time when everyone else gets to rest. So you have to be resilient, you have to be focused, and you have to persevere. Because if you get scored on, you have to keep your morale up, or it'll just snowball and get worse.
Yeah.
And then the whole team will lose.
I have a
Short-term
question.
memory.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to say, would you employ short-term memory? Because this was something that I was listening to the other day too, which somebody was talking about either short-term memory where, you know, in basketball, I love basketball, obviously, because I keep on going back to that. But it's that thing where it's like you make a turnover, you miss a shot. As a shooter, you forget it, right? Short-term memory. Or do you sort of remember that and just iterate upon that, you know, and kind of like look out for that? How would you handle getting scored on, I guess, is the question that I'm asking.
Living in the moment. So
Mm.
the goal that was just scored is in the past. And if you don't focus in the present, then it's like do or die at every moment. If you lose focus for a second, a puck can come at you at 90 miles an hour and right by you. So you have to constantly dial in to what's happening in front of you and everything that's happening around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was actually talking to my cousin yesterday about sports in general. I didn't think of it about the team sports aspect. I just thought in general more of like life skills and confidence, ambition, having discipline, like all those qualities. But I never thought of it like in that sense. I mean, I grew up playing soccer, so that's like it's definitely a team sport, obviously. But that's a great point you brought up. You brought up of like you get school projects and it's just you by yourself, or maybe your parents helping you. But in life, you're usually doing things with groups of people, like to get things done. And it sounds like the realm you're in of your work life, it's a lot of group strategies in a sense. Can you kind of go into detail about that and how like you can apply that hockey aspect to that?
Sure. Well, it's even like let's just say go back to gaming, right? Like Call of Duty, right? So there's like team deathmatch and you're all playing and as a team accumulating points, but then there's objectives, and some people don't play those objectives. They just try to do team deathmatch within, and so if they're not playing the objectives, the whole team suffers.
Mm-hmm.
So even in gaming, you have to focus on the objectives. And
Are you a gamer, bro?
Yeah, I play a little Call of Duty.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Because I'm a gamer, dude. That's
I'm a-
why.
yeah.
When you
If I'm like a
gamer.
7 out of 10, he's like a 12 out of 10.
I not as much as I used to be, but I'm slowly creeping back into the gaming. That's why.
A little Call of Duty or what?
I mean, I brought my Switch with me up here.
right.
And I've been playing a little Zelda, Breath of the Wild,
Mm.
a little bit of Smash Bros. I definitely love FPSs though. My cousins made me re-download Destiny, which, you know, it's essentially Call of Duty. Activision made it with Bungie, right? They like teamed up to make it. And yeah, man, I used to love COD. My shit was Modern Warfare 2. I think that was the second one. I loved that one.
We were playing a lot during the pandemic.
That's what we're playing now.
Modern Warfare, is that the new one? Modern Warfare 2?
They remastered it.
Okay, so that's
yeah.
the one that I used to play. The original one was the one.
It's the same game now, but they made the graphics better and they added to it.
Is it fire?
Dude, it's so sick.
Ugh.
Is that the platform that Warzone's played on?
Yeah.
Is Warzone still a thing or no?
Huh?
Is Warzone still a thing or no?
They Warzone's still a thing, but they made a new Warzone called Resurgence, and it's way better.
So that's the new battle royale.
Hell yeah. It's
Okay.
like Warzone, you play for 30 minutes, you die, and then it's like over.
Uh-huh.
Kind of like PUBG. But in Resurgence, you can die and respawn over and over and over until a certain timer kicks in. Then it's like last team standing.
Oh, all right. That's kind of dope.
Is that one of okay.
It's like a blend of Call of Duty and Warzone. And that's
yeah.
So it's kind of, but do you only respawn if there's at least one person left on the map from your team? Okay. I like that.
Oh,
I like that a lot.
wow.
It always feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good when you're in
I played.
parties, they like you wipe a squad and you hear it.
Oh,
And like,
Yeah.
man. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I love gaming. I had so many good memories gaming. Okay, so I'm so sorry to retract. I literally went so far off just the whole gaming thing, but you were talking about in gaming, there's objectives that you need to accomplish. Because George Michael was asking about the team sports and how in your professional life you employ a lot of strategies. So I completely went on a tangent there. I had to though, because I didn't know you were a gamer and I love gaming. But if you could continue on down that trail that you were going on, that would be awesome.
all right, well, the success of any business venture is like the cumulative effort and personal success of every team member. So like I'm an entrepreneur. Like outside of film, I started my first business at age 8. I went door to door selling stuff. But then I had a web design company at 13, and then in college I had a motorsports company, and I had all these people. And basically, to find success, you have to surround yourself with very capable people, and you want to invest in them.
Okay.
So now that I'm like producing my own films, I surround myself by the most capable professionals that I can. I hire mentors now as people to work with me, and I invest in them. Like when I hire someone, I ask them 2 things. What do you need payment wise to make you happy to do this job properly? And 2, what are your dreams and goals? Because if someone has a dream or goal that I can help them reach, I'm going to write it down, put it in my pocket. And when I'm able to execute and help them get there, I do it.
You sound very intentional. Like this is inspiring because me being. So the reason why I say that is because I feel like I'm the type of person that's very delved into my creativity, which is I make music. But you seem like you come with the producer hat on, and it's very the grand scheme of it all. But you do delve into like the details of like what does each person need or each entity need within the creative process of executing a film in particular. How did you get to that point? Because I was thinking earlier as well how you were saying that you were selling stuff at 8, and I've come to an assumption. I mean, I could be wrong that some people can learn to become an entrepreneur, but a lot of entrepreneurs are just they got it in them from the start. You know what I'm saying? Like they're hustling some way or another. So my question more so is how did you get to the point of like trying to understand so many moving parts in the grand scheme of creating a film? Like did that come natural to you, or it took time to learn that, or like certain experiences helped you learn that? How did that come about?
Film for me is something new. So I am about 15 years into my career, and I moved to LA about 7 years ago. I cut one short film, and then a good friend of mine, Sean Piccinino,
Let's
he
go.
headed with a feature that had not been cut. And I went from one short to cutting an assembly of a feature. And it's a World War II feature. It had Casper Van Dien in it. It's like super sick because I grew up with Starship Troopers.
Damn.
And I had to learn film from the post-production side, but over time in switching hats to the producing side, I had to learn a lot more. And basically, it's like my producer mentor, Noel Vega, he told me a producer doesn't need to have all the answers. He just needs to know the people that do. So if I don't know something, I'll make a phone call. I'll learn it as quickly as possible. I'll get the right answers, and then I'll get right back to it. So it's a never-ending learning process. Yeah.
Scorsese talks a lot about that a director's job is to essentially answer questions, right? So that was something that I heard him talk in an interview one time where and we've talked about this before too, George, but it's essentially, you're basically just answering questions all day long, right? Somebody comes up to you, which tie do you like? Let's do the red one. An actor comes up to you and wants to talk about a scene. You start talking about a scene. I think that specific to film, and I have a question for you as well, because you said you're about 15 years into your career, and I don't want to forget that. But specific to film, team sports are crucial to helping you understand how a film set works, in my opinion. Because if people aren't all there from the collective mind of, for me, it's best idea wins. Isaac is speaking now. I don't care who it comes from, right? If you guys aren't all there for the collective understanding that we're all here to do something that's bigger than ourselves, that then will suffer, because if one person thinks that they're bigger than somebody else, you're only going to be as good as the sum of your parts, right?
Exactly.
Like, look at the Heat. That's something that I have, again, basketball, but the Heat are an 8 seed. I know whatever, just Jimmy and all that stuff, but you look at it and it's like, oh, it's a collective team with one team mind, you know, and they're going after one thing. So
definitely see that with the Lakers as well. Sorry,
yeah,
sorry about that.
yeah, no, it's true, but
They have LeBron, but it's a team.
If you surround yourself with people that you respect and that are capable, it's a collaborative effort, and we need to take off the ego hat and be open to others' ideas. And, you know, we might not have the best idea. Someone else might have the best idea or another better way to implement it. So you always have to be open to that.
How are you able, well, I'm going to go back to the career thing, but how are you able to discern what the best idea is for you? It could be in life, it could be in film. What are your kind of like road marks or maps that lead you towards understanding, oh, this is a positive idea, or this is the best idea? How would you be able to discern that?
You mean like in the context of a film, or like the grand scheme picture of like a big life plan?
Let's go with film. Let's start with that.
Well, if we're talking about the story, like in the development of a story, we have the synopsis, right? I'll write the synopsis of 4 pages, and I'll have a collaborator to help me with it. And we'll sit down, we'll have a round table, we'll discuss it. You have to have the overall vision of where you want to go with it. And like the parts in the middle, so you have the beginning and the end, are all malleable. These things can all be changed, rearranged like a jigsaw puzzle, until you have a cohesive story, something that makes sense, that engages you.
And then for your life, how do you know what are, because discernment has been a big thing that's come into my life since I hit 30, right? That's been something that I constantly ask for, right? The clarity of vision to see the paths that are in front of me, the discernment to know which path to take, and then the courage to take those steps on that path, right? The courage and strength. So how would you be able to discern a path that's proper for you and maybe not proper? How in your life have you been able to get there?
Good question. So I'm 37. I'll be 38 in August.
You look great, bro.
What? Wait, what?
Coño.
Repeat what you just said.
Pipito, what's your skincare routine, dog?
I'm a vampire, man.
What's your skincare routine?
Wow. I thought you were our age.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good for you, dog.
Yeah, bro. Kudos. That's my goals right there. Goals.
So when I turned 35, I had this realization. I stopped thinking of myself as my age being 1 year. And instead of, I now think of it as a 10-year age range. So when I turned 35, I thought of myself as 35 to 45. And it's something I talk about, I write about, I call it embodying your future self. So I think in 1, 5, 10, and 15-year increments. And like, if I were to show you my board, you'd see the next 10 years of every film that I have planned out, all the IPs that I'm creating, and what years they should be released and what status and where they are. This concept of embodying your future self, it's like when I turned 35, I thought of myself as my 45-year-old self. And who is Julian at 45? What does he do? Is he successful? What kind of life does he have? Does he have a house? Is he married? Does he have children? How's his jujitsu? It's like, so if let's just say like health. So at 45, am I fat or am I healthy? Well, if I am fat, that means I'm not taking care of myself. If I'm healthy, that means I'm doing daily actions that have gotten me to that point over time. So that means I probably wake up and I do a 30-minute walk in the morning to burn some calories, get myself going, get some sunlight. It means I probably have my diet dialed in. It means I'm probably training jujitsu, and like, let's break down jujitsu. So I maybe be a brown belt by 45, going by my rate. And let's say I compete, say I want to be a world champion. So if I want to be a world champion, then what are the daily activities and habits that I have to do in the present, 10 years now in the past to get there? So I'm probably training X number of times a week, probably doing private lessons, probably competing. It's like, so what kind of house does he have? Well, if I have found success, then I have a house in Malibu on the water. So how do I find success? And then I break that down into all of my daily habits and all the things that I'm doing now, and then preparing and planning and investing for 10 years into the future. So I like looking at the end goal and reverse engineering how to get there. And then your plans and the things that you are doing in the present, they need to be in alignment with that.
Well,
That
I have two questions. I got two. I got questions now, man.
Go ahead. Go ahead, George.
So you mentioned jujitsu. That's gonna be my second question. Before I get into my first question, the reason why I'm interested in jujitsu is because I like MMA a lot, like a lot. Like I'll bet on it. I give people betting advice. I have in the past. I'm not there to just watch a knockout. I'm there to watch like the chess match between two elite.
Have you ever rolled,
warriors.
George? Have you ever rolled before?
No, and I'm kind of scared too because of my knees and stuff like that. Because I'm not flexible in that manner. Like but I know it could help my flexibility. And my cousin's trying to convince me because I actually have a membership at the UFC Fit gym here, and they have jujitsu classes and they have kickboxing classes. I love this gym. It's taking my workout regimen to another level. I might one day when I'm older, but I'm just hesitant. You know what I'm saying? Because
when you pick it up when you're older, you're gonna say, "Damn, I wish I had started this years ago."
yeah, I hear that. I definitely hear that.
That's what everyone says.
Yeah. So before I ask you a question about jujitsu, I kind of want to touch back again, not to kind of harp on it too much, but the entrepreneurial mind you have. What is it about? If you can recollect, that 8-year-old self, or just the journey up until now, what about entrepreneurship makes you love it? Is it like the hustle? Is it the social interactions? Is it what if it's more than one thing? That obviously can be, but can you touch on that just for the people listening? Because we all can have an entrepreneurial hat on from time to time, right? In this day and age when we're socializing with people for different inquiries. Like I'm a DJ, but at the same time, I have to like go out there and hustle and get tips and things of that nature. So what could you say on that of like what sparked your interest in being an entrepreneur?
Well, it's not really about the hustle, and it's not really about, so the very foundation of being an entrepreneur is entrepreneurs are those that like to solve problems and to improve the quality of life for others around you through business. It's about possibly improving the efficiency of a system around you. Say like there's a manufacturing company and someone comes up with a better way to do this, a better method. Well, that's starting a business in that realm, and that's entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs, they see something lacking in the world and they try to fill that by creating something.
Okay.
So
okay, that's interesting. So I know like kind of what I was saying might have sounded superficial, like, oh, the hustle or just like being social with people, but that I had a feeling you might have said that because of how you answered previous questions of just having to solve problems and working with people. I never thought of it in that sense, but it's pretty interesting that you're like, yeah, it's your livelihood, but it seems like the majority of the time you're thinking of not you and just the situation that you're trying to solve and the people that you've employed or people that are like looking for you to execute.
Yeah.
Right?
Entrepreneurs generally, they try to add something to the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that sounds very amazing because usually a lot of people think entrepreneurs are just hustlers where you're really just trying to be selfless in a sense.
No, because hustle you could be a businessman, right? You could just be doing business. Yeah. But entrepreneurs, they try to leave their mark on the world by doing something different, by creating.
Okay.
Something very cool about entrepreneurship is jobs creation. So like me personally, my biggest goal, like I don't want success if it's just me. I don't want the huge house in Malibu. if it's just me, if I didn't bring up the people around me that helped me get there, then that's not success to me.
Mm.
So for me, my primary goal is I want to generate wealth for myself, but for everyone around me. I want to be a generator of wealth for everything and everyone around me.
That's gonna be pretty fulfilling, right? Creating jobs just out of like.
Yeah, if you think of a movie, like how many hundreds of people are employed
We
in
talk about that a lot, yeah.
you know?
That's
And if you
amazing.
have multiple businesses across different industries, then you're employing people. And what's better than helping people pay their bills, feed their families, take care of them? Like you're doing good for the world. So, but it's like you got to be a benevolent leader. You got to pay people properly, because there's entrepreneurs that build businesses that pay people minimum wage, and that's not really making the world a better place. Making the world a better place is taking care of your people, investing in them, bringing them up, maybe taking a little bit less of the pie for yourself and sharing it. That to me is my definition of entrepreneurship and the way I would do business. That's not for everyone, but that's how I've found success, is by not being greedy and sharing.
Interesting.
Sharing is
Isaac,
caring.
look like you have a question, so I can hold on to my jiu-jitsu question, but before you ask your question, I have a question that we ask consistently on the show. Can you hear my dog?
No.
Okay, good, because she's scratching the door right now. She's scratching the door now.
That's fun.
I don't ask unless I hear her, so she's scratching the door right now. That's why.
It's
That's
a
why
bit.
that's why I have
It's
my mic
become
down here. You cut out. And then him cutting out, that's a thing too.
Dude, my mic consistently. I've looked at so many videos. I just think I need a new computer. My mic cuts out. You'll see as I'm talking. It's interesting. You're saying all these things, and I have like a bit of a cross realization here, because you're such a giving person. Talking to you, Julian, you, in my experience with you, which I guess now is a good time as ever, is that I starred in a film on Netflix called That's More, that you had a hand in editing, correct? That was
I cut a little bit, little tiny piece.
But that's how we cross paths. That's
Yes.
essentially how we cross paths. And you've been nothing but gracious and so giving to my wife and I. And the fact that you include my wife in what you give, and just out of an altruistic spirit, has been nothing short of who you say that you are and what you're leading in your life and what your mission is. So number one, kudos on that. Number two, I don't know if you've ever read The Four Agreements. That's a book that I try to emulate as much as possible, which is a really great book by Don Miguel Ruiz. And the first agreement is be impeccable with your word, which is sin pecad, which is just be without sin, basically meaning if you don't like peanut butter, don't say you like peanut butter. You know what I'm saying? So don't say you're going to do something without actually doing it. And you live by the things that you're talking about right now. When it comes to entrepreneurship and all these types of things, I'm like, oh, all this stuff makes so much sense, because the way that you lead through your actions is completely, your words back up how you lead. So I think people that lead first by their actions, and then when they speak, it's just kind of like, yeah, that makes complete sense, because that's how I see them. My dad always told me growing up, listen with your eyes, right? It's because somebody could be saying one thing, but the way that they are acting is a completely different way. So I just wanted to give you some props on the way that you just lead your life, because you definitely are a benevolent spirit, or a benevolent incarnation of whatever you want to do, which is really, really great. And then I did want to ask one thing before we get to the jujitsu, because you talked about your 15 years into your career. Okay. And what would you consider your career is, number one? It's like a twofold question. And then how did you get into that? Period.
What is my career? Oh man, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, because you said it earlier that you're 15 years into it. So I want to know what you were talking about when you said that. Like what in your mind was your career that you're 15 years into?
So do you want like the whole story of like the beginning, like the very beginning, how I got started?
Let's hit it. The coffee's kicking in for me right now, so let's hit it.
Yeah.
So it's gonna start with a terrible accident.
boy.
I live in St. Louis, and there's a perimeter gate surrounding my apartment complex, and it was a fire hazard because you could only exit by having a key. And one day I didn't have my key, and I climbed the top, and my flip-flops got stuck at the very top on a spike, and I fell 10 feet face first into concrete. and I shattered half of my face. This is all titanium. And the next day, my mother had flown up to St. Louis, hired professional movers. They packed up all my stuff, and I was shipped to Texas. I didn't have a say in the matter, and I was there in Texas for reconstructive plastic surgery.
Colombian mother, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
and I needed to keep my health insurance. And so I signed up for a broadcasting tech school. So like, just to back up a little bit. So in high school, there were a couple things that I wanted to do that I never did. We had a closed circuit. I went to an all boys Catholic prep school, and we had a closed circuit television network. And I was always interested in doing that. It's called SJET. But they started at 6 a.m. every day. And I was someone that was always late, getting detentions, like 40 plus senior year, because I was just always late.
Colombiano.
Colombian time.
Yeah, do that,
And
right?
so I never did that because I was always running late, and I didn't want to be at school at 6 a.m. because I ain't about that life. And then I also wanted to wrestle, but I didn't want to be in spandex. And so I did lacrosse, and I was terrible at lacrosse. But I wish I had done wrestling, because if you fast forward 10 years, what am I doing? I'm in spandex doing no-gi jujitsu. And I'm working in television and film. So like,
That's so
as a
fun.
kid, I had an idea of what I wanted to do, kind of, or my interests, but I just never did it. What was the question? Where were we?
So I love this. So, the question is what your career is and how did you get into it?
Okay, so I've always had a love for music. Like my parents met in a nightclub, and I was always raised by having like stereos and like DJ equipment at the house. And music's always been a big part of my life. I played violin, trumpet, guitar,
Wow.
and I learned how to DJ later on, how to mix. But so I was in orchestra, and I had a love for house music. And so it was in the same month that I went to broadcasting tech school that I picked up martial arts. So that accident, like, I like rewriting traumatic narrative into something positive. So like, my accident is the best thing that ever happened to me. It got me into martial arts, and it got me into film and television. So I went to broadcasting tech school because I wanted to work in radio because of my love for music. And they taught me how to shoot video. So, and the goal was to work in news. So we did television packages, like a news segment, and I did a story called "Why Aren't There More Female DJs in the Industry?" So I went and I shot a 10-person party uh, at a small club in Houston. Someone saw that, and they were like, "Hey, come shoot our 100-person party." And so I went and I shot that 100-person party. And as I was shooting that nightclub, that DJ event, without even having looked at the footage to see if I had, shot it well, haven't edited anything. I had only edited one video my entire life up to that point. The owners of Night Culture, they're the biggest nightlife promotion company in Texas, and I guess they expanded throughout the whole Southwest. They asked me if I could shoot their New Year's Eve balloon drop at Stereo Live, which is like 3,000 people with Armand Van Helden. So I'd be on stage shooting a balloon.
Stop it.
And so I did that, and that led to like 15 other videos. And
Wow.
so at that same time, I started an internet radio station called Empire of Love Radio, which is like Emperor of Love.
Ah, okay.
And so I had this big brand, and I had 60 DJs from around the world. I had like jingles, sweepers. I mean, like, it was fully branded. It was running 24/7. All these DJs were creating custom mixes, putting in my station ID. I mean, it was like, I built something amazing. And at that same time, at that radio station manager's home, I met someone who would later become like a colleague. And that day he asked me if I had, a camera. So I said yes, and we ended up shooting the Texans OTC conference. And then, like, fast forwarding it through other people, he was introduced to a billionaire, and actually it was the wealthiest billionaire in all of Texas. And that gentleman funded us for creating a television network. So I think it was 22 or 23, I co-founded a television network, full broadcast. So I became a young TV exec at like 23.
Wow.
And we worked directly for this billionaire. His name is Lee Cook. and he owns the largest fiber optic company in all of North America. It's been a while, so I don't remember the exact facts, but he was on the Manhattan Project with Albert Einstein.
Oh,
Is
Wow.
either the inventor of fiber optics or one of from that project.
I mean, Oppenheimer's coming out pretty soon.
That's
I can't wait
amazing.
for that one.
So he brought us into his studio, or he built us a studio, and within his television cable company. And there I learned how to operate an entire television network from the ground up. I managed the station's 24 hours programming, the scheduling, the strategies involved in all that. I ran the master control with the 24 hours of programming. I decided what aired when, what commercials aired where. I sent out contracts, acquired shows. I produced a few hundred hours of television episodes of like talk shows. We had a new tech TriCaster, and I also was a technical director for about like 50 or 60 episodes. I brought in crew, I hired people, and I basically like ran the network from the ground up. And I learned a whole lot about television. And my goal had always been to like start another television network. I ended up leaving that company and getting into advertising. A year into my advertising career, I was at a company. It was the oldest Hispanic ad agency in Houston. My boss left, and then I got bumped up to production manager. And in my 2 years at the company, I produced and edited probably about 1,000 commercials for Hispanic and English television, aired on all the major networks. I left and did that on my own for a couple years. Then one day, I was sitting in a movie theater with my parents, and I was watching a movie. It was Edge of Tomorrow, Tom Cruise.
Yes, Live, Die, Repeat is what it's called now.
And I was sitting in that movie, and the credits rolled. And I realized then and there that I would never see my name in the credits if I stayed in Houston. I decided at that moment that I would have to move to LA. I then found an event called Produced by Conference at Sony. It's 1,000 of the top producers in Hollywood. They meet for a convention that lasts a couple days. And so I flew to LA for that, which was an extraordinary experience. I made friends with a gentleman who's on the international board. So we went around to a bunch of events together, and I made a buddy. And I also paid to sit down at a round table with a gentleman named Clay Newbill, who is an EP of Shark Tank. He's a producer on Road Rules and The Real World. So he's like the father of reality television.
Yeah.
At that round table were also 5 other people, 2 of which were former VPs at Pixar and NBC. And for an hour, they convinced me that I had, at least Clay's words were that I undoubtedly had what it takes to become successful in Hollywood. And the 3 of them talked to me for an hour, and they were like, you need to move here. Like, you have what it takes. From that conversation, 2 weeks later, I packed up everything and I left Houston, and I moved to California.
Oh, yeah.
Started completely from scratch. I only knew one person here who later became one of my best friends and mentors. But I moved here to LA with no friends, no connections, no family, no money, basically. It was really hard at the beginning. I slept on a wooden floor for a month before I even had a bed. And I landed my first job within 3 months. Usually I'm told it's about 6 on average, but I got a job at a digital post house for a show called Comic Book Girl 19. Then later on, I got one of the people there. He brought me on to another company, a company that blew up. They got like 20 million investment called Pocket Watch. They do a lot of kids programming. And so I was one of like the foundation ground members of that new venture. And then later on, like I worked odd jobs, and I got into that short film. But it was coming up as an editor in LA is super brutal. I was applying to maybe 400 jobs a year and only getting like this. It's soul sucking, it's soul crushing, but you have to be resilient. You have to just keep going. How did I end up in this career? Well, there came a time when, see, I love science fiction. And when I landed my first sci-fi film, uh, it, I interviewed for 2 weeks, and the director loved me, and I was going to cut the project, and we discussed workflow and everything, and they got a lot of my time. And then 2 weeks later, he comes back to me and says, "I'm really sorry. The producers decided to go with an editor from Texas who was."
Wow.
That's ironic.
And now check this
That's
out.
part of the story, man. That's stuff like that happens.
He quoted them $3,000 for the edit of the feature and the color. I had just learned Avid. Okay, so I can go back to that. But
Wow.
a mentor told me that my rate was like $17.50 a week at that point, and I said, okay, I can take 10 weeks to cut this, so I quoted them $17,500. That versus the $3,000 from this guy from Texas, I think it was Dallas. Plus, he's going to color it. That crushed me, and I said, from that moment on, I was not going to leave my destiny, my fate, my ability to pay rent, to feed myself, and my future in the hands of people like that are just going to undercut you and go for the cheapest thing possible.
Yeah.
So at that moment, I decided to start producing. That I was going to produce and develop the products that I would like to edit. And so that's what I've been doing the last few years.
How old were you? How old were you when this happened?
This was about 5 years ago. So
Wow.
So how long?
Still pretty fresh.
When did you move to LA? How long have you been in LA?
7 years ago this July, on Colombia's Independence Day, actually.
Wow. Bendiciones. You cut out.
It was I moved on Colombia's Independence Day, which is just really funny.
Was that a coincidence, or was that kind of like it was around the date, or okay?
Pure coincidence.
I moved out in August of 2016. Yeah. So it'll be August of 2016, Isaac. Yep. It'll be 7 years in August that I've been out here.
Oh, you too.
So that's funny that I mean, just along those lines. So quite a few things that you gave us there, which are phenomenal. Yeah. Thank you for that. Your story is unreal. I love the whole concept, and it's not unreal. It's super real. It's kind of what I'm saying. The idea of turning trauma into something that's beneficial. George Michael knows. He and I both actually have digestive health. Not to throw your shit out there, George Michael.
Nah. Hey,
but
people need to hear this.
Yeah, I have super intense digestive issues. I have diverticulosis. And I super small thing that'll tie into what you were talking about. As soon as I graduated college, I got cast in a play in Miami. I knew I wanted to move to LA. I didn't know how I was going to do it. 2 weeks before we open, I get hit with a giant infection in my intestine, and I was in the hospital for 6 days. They had to recast somebody who took over. He's a really good friend of mine now. And I had diverticulitis, right? So I was in the hospital. I couldn't eat or drink water for 6 days. I literally had Pampers on. Like, I was leaking from my body. I lost 15 pounds in 6 days, essentially. And I had a PICC line IV that I had to take home afterward for 17 days that I would administer my own antibiotics after. Anyways, the reason why I bring that up is because I remember distinctly there was a point when I was in the hospital that I looked out the window of the hospital, and I just remember thinking, I would be dead right now if it wasn't for modern medicine. I need to get out to California regardless of what happens, because I could not be here right now, right? All of this could not be happening. So that traumatic experience not only gave me the impetus to do that, and then it's funny how things just started falling in place after that, but it also was a beneficial tool for me because now I have to eat healthy. It changed my diet. It changed my health regimen, and it's drastically improved my quality of life, while also at times it being something that was incredibly scary and not good for my quality of life, obviously. So I think that whole traumatic experience that happened to you in St. Louis, to where then you had to move down, it's all part of the story of it's your hero's origin story. I'm obsessed with anime also, so that's like a very
same.
Do you watch My Hero? Do you watch My Hero Academia?
Yes, I do. I've been watching anime since I was about 8.
Bro, let's go. we could have a whole episode about that.
One of my goals is to do my first anime series in the next 10 years.
What?
I I have my 10-year slate of film projects, and that includes an anime show. So
You got to make a good Dragon Ball Z live action film. That's all. That's all I've ever told
those live
myself.
actions are so hard to pull off.
I know.
The world deserves it.
Are you a One Piece fan?
That's the one. That's the one out of the major ones I have not seen.
Bro, have you seen Naruto?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Are you a dub or a sub guy?
Subs all the way.
Attaboy. Subs all the way. Subs all the way. So anyways, One Piece, they're making a Netflix One Piece, and Oda is he's backing it and helping them write it and everything. So I'm really interested to see how One Piece turns out on Netflix. I'm very curious because I didn't watch the Death Note. I only read the manga. I didn't watch the anime or watch the live action, but I heard the live action was not great adaptation of that. And every Dragon Ball live action thing has always been doo-doo, for lack of a better term. So bro, your first anime in 10 years. God bless you. I hope you do it. I hope I'm there to see it happen because I will watch it, bro. I love anime. Okay, so that was one thing I want to talk about, that resiliency. And then you said something there at the end that I want to touch on, which was about that it's soul crushing and soul sucking. I have this thing where I truly think anybody that moves out to LA specifically in the hopes of being in this industry and career is incredibly courageous. It's a very courageous act to take just because it's wrought with a lot of uncertainty. I think oftentimes people come out here thinking one thing and they're not rooted in a foundation that's going to be solid for them to build upon. So it's like they're trying to grab sand in their hands and it just keeps falling out of their hands. And I heard Ryan Gosling talk one time about how LA is this city where it's a bunch of these Don Quixote figures, a lot of Don Quixote figures that are coming out here, right? And they're fighting the windmill, and they think it's a giant type of thing. And they're all from different parts. It's a transient city, all these things, and it can be soul crushing. That's why I'm so incredibly grateful that I have my home and my wife, because it's unbelievable to have people like that in your life. What do you do what did you do to maintain your soul strength? Did you eat a sensu bean? Hey, see? but what no, on a serious note, what do you employ to, just talk a little bit about your soul and things like that, if you want.
Are you talking about like back then, like when it was super soul crushing, or?
Sure.
Or
yeah. However you take that. Yeah.
Well, I won't get too deep into it, but I was in a relationship for 3 years, and she moved to LA 6 months into me moving here. So it was kind of like building for our future, and I was always looking towards the future to, like, just build some prosperity for the two of us. Once that ended, it became a journey to build towards a better future for myself and for others. Like, I would be unable to help and leave my mark on the world if I didn't get myself to a specific place in life. Specific amount of resources, the audience, the reach, the credibility, it all bands together.
I have another question and theory, which is that breakups are, I mean, we don't have to get into it, but breakups are one of the best motivating factors if you allow it to be, right? I know that after I've gone through breakups in my life that have been pretty traumatic, George has been there for all of them. It's been something where the one that I learned the most from was right after it was done, I decided to look inside of myself and really learn who I was and what I wanted to do before I could commit myself to something outside of myself again, which is, funnily enough, like a couple of years after that's when I met my wife, right? Because I had been working on myself through that. So how do you yeah, sorry about that, boys. That's the beauty of being in the woods.
Yep.
I'm now on my hotspot on my phone, so it's charging though, but I apologize.
That first part's recorded, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
oh yeah.
Julian, move a little closer. No, you're good now. You're good now. It was just like your camera was refocusing. You're good now.
No, it definitely recorded. It's
but
converting right now.
it stopped recording when you rebooted, Isaac. So I'm just gonna. It's like a 5-second tangent of what we were talking about. I was telling Julian that since he's essentially a generation older than us, right? That's accurate, right?
Uh,
You cut out. You cut out.
I don't know if I'm a generation.
Not a generation, but
he's right
how
on the
would you put it?
cusp. He's right on
On
the
the cusp.
cusp of
Okay.
being a
Yeah.
generation older than us. He's like 7 years older than us.
Yeah. So I told him, I forgot what I told you exactly, Julian, but it was based off of how I think our core audience would be people along our age group.
Yeah.
And how
definitely.
what you're saying is things that, oh, I remember now, kind of being that big brother aspect of telling the younger generation, a younger generation, or just younger people, that you might be struggling right now or going through the mud, but A, everything's going to be okay. But B, which is connected to that, you got to put in the work, or just keep your head down and keep grinding, and everything will be okay. Just be satisfied where the chips may fall, right? So I don't know what I was getting at with that, but I guess I was just kind of wrapping up everything we talked about so far. Because what you're saying is speaking volumes to me, at least. And every time you're saying something, it's popping at least another question or two in my head. So I guess we can get back to what you and Isaac were kind of discussing in a sense. Well, what were we talking about? What was it we were talking about?
We were talking about the soul. How you were talking about how you bounce back when you were talking about, and we were talking about breakups being something that really can be a motivating factor. And
there we go.
A question that I was thinking a lot about is how do you deal with rejection, Julian? Because you seem to me as somebody who is so, and I told you this over the phone yesterday, you know, our intention was to literally put our phones down just for an hour to 3 hours, however long we can be here, have intentional conversations with people that we admire and respect. And ever since the moment I met you, I remember getting in the car and talking to Sky on the way home, and I was like, man, that guy was so nice. You're always smiling, number one, right? You're a very kind person, but you also look people in the eyes, which is something that I don't think a lot of people do when they're speaking to somebody else. They're waiting to talk rather than actually actively listening. And you engage me as somebody who's an active listener. So how do you deal with rejection in this industry? Because you're a very positive and intentional guy.
Rejection is just redirection. When you're 8 years old, going door to door, selling business supplies and stationery, not everyone's going to want some. So from an early age, I was used to people saying no, or even in school, like I never really got the attention I wanted. So I became the class clown, and I always sought attention in different ways because I always kind of felt rejected. And growing up, it's like with dating, it's like everything is a numbers game, and you just have to roll with the punches. If someone is not interested in you for business, or in you personally, it might not even be about you. It might just be about them and how they perceive the world. But rejection isn't something that you should be taking personally. For anything, you know, there's 6 or 7 billion people in the world. What's one person not giving a damn about you? You know,
that's what
okay.
Kevin Hart talks about. That he goes, and I think Drew Barrymore did too, but I remember specifically Kevin Hart saying, I started to really come into my power when I stopped giving a fuck about what somebody who doesn't know me thinks about me. Somebody who doesn't have a vested interest in my well-being as a human being, who cares what they think about me?
Yeah, rejection doesn't bother me at all. I mean, yeah, it's like when I was 20, I was in a communications class that had a female teacher, 22 women, and 3 guys. And I wrote like a guide to dating, like how to initiate conversation. And in that, I talked about, and I got a standing ovation, right, from all the women. And I talk about how if one person isn't interested in you, who cares? You know, there's 6 point something billion people in the world. More than, I don't know, half, 51% are female. So who really cares? You know, your self-worth is not dictated by other people. It's about who you are and what you bring to the world. So if someone doesn't see value in you on any level, that's just their loss. And they might not really see or agree with what is valuable. And as long as you have that internal integrity, then that's what's important. Like, who cares? Or you're gonna, for any investment or for any business venture or for anything, you're gonna get no's and then you're gonna finally get the yes. And you just have to be resilient. You have to know your worth. You have to know who you are. And you have to, of course, like, love yourself and respect yourself.
Know your worth. Those
Yep.
are it takes, I think it takes some time to really understand what that even means. It's definitely something that's come about that I learned more about for myself from being out in LA for the majority of my 20s, and then through the lockdown and the quarantine. That was something that was interesting, because coming out of it, it was like, time is the most precious thing that any of us have. It's a non-renewable resource, right? And it's something that is finite. So is my time worth this thing? Right? I think that I wasted a lot of time. I don't want to say wasted. I spent a lot of time doing things early on in my 20s that were probably not the most beneficial to who I was, like my late teens and early 20s. We talked about temptation, I think in the last podcast episode. I don't remember.
I feel like it's the underlying theme of this podcast. If I had to take one quote, it's the Matthew McConaughey one. Of just,
but you know who you,
say it.
yeah, you know who you are by finding out who you're not. That's how,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wisdom comes with age, but also I think, like, the greatest flex we can ever have is to be who we say we are.
Mm.
And that's the journey of becoming your most authentic self. That's doing your inner work. That's doing your shadow work. That's knowing the pros and the cons of being you. That's accepting your vices, and working on them.
That's a big quote. The biggest flex is being who you say you are. Wow.
It's true,
That's kind
bro.
of the goal. That's kind of one of the goals of life. I feel like it can take a lot of time for some people, and then some people just clicks. But
I mean, in a world of fake people that don't even know who they are, that try to be someone else or see some celebrity on Instagram, an influencer on Instagram, and they try to just model themselves after that without really discovering who they are themselves, what's their reason for breathing. It's the journey of becoming your most authentic self is the most important journey you could ever undertake. And in becoming your most authentic self, you're able to find other people that align with your core values. And then you just take the journey with them.
yeah, it's a journey, man.
I wanted to ask, hold on, let me change my name because I always see that's wrong. Do you think, because for me, when I am down, just talking about resiliency and things like that, anime really has helped me. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think about a lot of times, I was talking about breakups being a motivating factor. I remember in college when I would like work out, I was like, whenever I didn't want to do that last set, I would think about, these fucking people are gonna, I'll show them, type of thing. Right. And then once I got over that heartbreak and I moved past that, it was like, I'm doing this for my family. Like, I literally would think about that. And then there's certain times when I think about Deku, for instance, right, from My Hero. I'm like,
Plus ultra, bro.
just go plus ultra. I literally listen to You Say Run sometimes when I'm working out. I listen to it when I take a cold shower in the morning. Sky makes fun of me because she's like, "Oh, you're taking a cold shower," because she'll hear it. Da, 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 da. I'm literally just standing in the shower. It's freezing. I'm like it's pretty. I think it's hilarious. But anyways, do you think that anime has helped your resilience in some ways?
Yes.
Yeah, dude.
Like who like there, but we talk about like the genres of anime, right? Like shonen is the genre
Yeah,
that we watch.
yeah.
About the young guy that discovers his power and he's like
Right.
resilient and he's like
It's geared towards males.
overcomes adversity.
Yeah.
and does his own thing, and he follows his own journey and becomes a hero. And then at the end of the whole thing, he finally finds acceptance with like the community.
Yeah.
That's why, yeah, anime is just so great. Not only is it a medium of storytelling that you could tell stories in creative ways that you can't really with live people, but it's that genre where it speaks to the inner hero of every guy. You know, who hasn't tried going Super Saiyan at some point in their life?
Yeah. George and I used to draw. We used to have competitions of drawing Dragon Ball Z when we were in second grade, bro.
I've showed this at least like 2 or 3 times on the podcast. Yeah, I drew this like my senior year of high school. I just have it there every day on my wall.
That's
just like
fire.
and smirking, you know.
Seeing that image right there, I'm like, dude, that I can hear that voice in Japanese with subtitles. That is not a dub photo. That is
dude. That's what
a sub photo right there.
It is
damn right.
I just I feel very fortunate to have grown up around that kind of thing because it's really instilled resilience in me. I think that's a really great thing. And you know, have you read Book of the Five Rings? Is that what it's called?
I know of it. I've read tidbits, but I've not read.
Miyamoto Musashi. I think that's his name.
Familiar.
And anyways, he talks a lot about, he was like one of these famed samurais. He was a Ronin, I think, too, because he kind of went against everything. Anyways, he talks a lot about how a warrior has to be a gardener as well. So, and George and I have touched on this a few times. I have this idea in my brain that's called a steel tissue. All right. Because we talked about what makes you resilient. Right. And I like that idea because a tissue is something that can, you know, wipe away blood, and it can also wipe away tears, type of things. So what would you say, what's your relationship with like vulnerability? How would you describe your relationship with vulnerability? And
a big topic in 2023 with relationship coaches and all this. So I feel like, okay, so let's go back to relationships. Relationship coaches nowadays, and a lot of women say that they want you to be vulnerable, but the thing that women like is strength.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like being vulnerable in front of your girl is good.
I agree.
There's a time and a place for that because they want to land on your strength.
Well, what do you mean by what do you mean by you don't think being vulnerable in front of your girl? Like in what situations?
Show that you're
like crying,
depressed, crying.
Right.
That work is killing you. Like they want to lean on you and know that everything's gonna be okay. So where can you put those emotions? Because bottling it up, that's toxic. You gotta be around people who understand that. Who does? It's your boys. You know, like men should have brotherhood. We should have our boys. We should have boy time. And that's why I like jujitsu so dope. It's because it's therapeutic. You go in there and it's not like playing video games. It's at every moment someone's trying to crush you and you're trying to crush them. You're trying to impose your will on them as they try to do it to you. It's meditative because in that moment for those 6 minutes, there's no other thought in the world that's going on other than that. And then you build over time camaraderie with your friends, your teammates. You sweat together, you bleed together, you help each other prepare for competition, which is like you're going out there at 100% and people are essentially trying to do you harm, you know, on video in front of their friends and family. So it's like very real. And that's why like martial arts as a vehicle is so healthy, is because we get to channel those moments of pain, and whenever you finish training you always feel better. I mean, unless you got like super smashed that day and then you're driving home and music's and you're going like 5 miles an hour under the speed limit because all you do is think about how you got your ass handed to you. But other than those days, it's like therapeutic. You're like,
you need days like that.
I went trained.
You do. Those
like
the Deku days.
So it all comes down to brotherhood.
Yeah.
You know, you got to have your boys.
And go ahead. Sorry.
And so like a big problem is that like some men, they get into a relationship and they only hang out with their girl and they stop seeing their boys. And then what happens? They lose their brotherhood. And then those men change. They become soft. And then what happens? statistically, like what percentage of marriages or divorces are caused by women or like initiated by women? It's like 70 or 80%.
Wow. I
those
didn't know that.
A lot of those men change over time and they stop being
Wow.
fell for. So it's imperative that as men we should have boy time and brotherhood and jujitsu.
Yeah, I've been watching podcasts on that actually. It's very important.
It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a
gardener in a war.
Bruce Lee said that, right? I think it was Bruce Lee. I saw that quote recently. Yeah.
I don't know who said it. He might have repurposed it. I don't think he's the one that started it though. No. Okay. Because I don't think.
I think someone asked him like, "What's the point of being a warrior?" or something like that.
He probably said, "Be like water." No, he didn't. He didn't say that. But he did talk about that in a different context.
What's the point of being the warrior, dude? When the barbarians are at the gates, you're gonna be happy you have them,
bro. That's the thing that I think about a lot of times too, in terms of some, living in LA specifically. I talked to Sky about this too, because I love to cry all the time. I'm a cry. I watch a movie and I'll weep. I watch anime.
You cut out.
Anime, watch, you're good. And I weep. And it's interesting, the idea of vulnerability and strength. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because I totally agree with you. And specifically with doing something physical. Right. And you talked about how in jiu-jitsu there's that 6 minutes and that's all you're thinking about. We recently started bouldering, like just climbing in rock climbing gyms or whatever. And I think that element of climbing up, you have to be, so dialed in while you're going up, because if you slip, you could fall and hurt yourself. Right. So there's that added thing in there. And
gravity's a bitch, let me tell you that.
Yeah. Dude, you're like the fucking Terminator, so it's funny because I think jujitsu, I've rolled a few times. I do not say that I do jujitsu. I do not, but I've rolled a few times and I love it. Every time I do it, I'm always like, damn, because one of the most enticing things to me about jujitsu is when you step on the mat, you bow, which, I've heard a lot of people talk about, which is like, you could get tapped out by anyone at any time. It's all dependent on that day. Obviously, you're less inclined to get tapped out by somebody who doesn't know what they're doing versus somebody who does. But it's just that sense of we're equals as we walk on here, and then you bow as you leave. And I think that's like I really like that, because it eliminates the ego side of it. You could be rolling with the CEO of a company. You could be rolling with the plumber from down the street. Right. Yeah. And that idea of equality is crucial. And you talking about needing boy time, George and I have talked about this before in my own personal life, and the same thing with my wife. I constantly ask her, or not constantly, there's times when I ask her, have you talked to your girls lately? Because I need you to talk to your girls. Right. And she tells me the same thing, where I'm like, she's like, you should go and be with your boys. Right. And you should go and hang out. You should go and have guy time. You need guy time the same way that she needs girl time. Just because of the fact that their relationship will never be how my relationship is with my wife. It's completely different. They satisfy completely different boxes in that sentiment. So yeah, man, I think that's a very interesting perspective that you have. And I agree with that. Vulnerability is definitely something that's come up. And I think that there's strength, like you said, and the time and place for being vulnerable. What I don't think is progressive or a sense of progress is when you allow vulnerability to become a crutch. Right. So it's like what you're saying. Sure. When you come to your girl and you're like, damn, work is beating me down. I am such a proponent of, okay, if something's beating you down, voice it, then find something to do about it. Don't just sit in it, because the longer that you sit in it, the more time passes. You were talking about resources, and you can't, and you're just not doing anything about it. Do something about it, Yeah.
Right. That's why I practice Stoic philosophy.
Yes, brother.
And it's about accepting what is, like amor fati. It's the love of one's fate, the good and the bad. If you're able to accept the hand that you've been dealt, you can move forward without pity. It's just life. Back to vulnerability. Like I don't cry. In the last few years, it's only been twice. When my ex of 3 years left me, it broke me. I was so depressed I couldn't lift my chin off my chest. It was at the very beginning of the pandemic. I had no human interaction for 6 months, which actually, so the two best, most painful things that ever happened to me were my face shattering and that breakup. That breakup led me to eventually becoming the man that partner wish I always was, and then some. And it also inspired the story for my science fiction film, Xander, the film that I'm going to shoot in Australia. It's a parallel to my journey in my apartment with my fish. So it's like the protagonist is going through space for a couple 100 years with his AI. Well, that spaceship he's going in was my apartment, and his AI companion was my fish, Walter. When Walter died, I cried. You know, that was after the breakup. For 6 months, I didn't see another living being, none. And I just had my fish. And so he died a day after my birthday last year.
Ooh.
And that hurt. But those are the only two times I've allowed myself to cry. Basically, it's like you give yourself a couple minutes to feel bad about yourself, and then you saddle the fuck up and you ride on into the sunset. You know, it's like you just can't wallow. You just got to move forward. You got to be strong. That's what we as men have to be by nature. You know, it's like Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar. Do you guys think that these guys sat around crying and feeling bad for themselves? Fuck no. These guys were dead set on creating their legacy, lasting empires, you know, leaving their mark on humanity for centuries or millennia to come.
Their purpose was bigger than them, so they had to move past
Hell
themselves and their feelings.
And that's what we as men should strive to be, in my opinion. We should strive to be the great men of history. Yeah. Anything else is not doing ourselves justice.
There's this guy, Kevin Samuels, rest in peace. He was like kind of like this YouTube guy talking a lot about like masculinity and that aspect. Not to get too deep into it, but obviously what I'm about to quote was very extreme, but it's just the concept of itself. He was like, the only times you should cry in front of your girl is if like a close person in your family dies, or if you break both of your arms. And after you break both of your arms, after 10 seconds, stop crying.
Exactly.
So it's not like, so it's kind of like what we talked about last episode too, where Isaac was like, George, are you more so of, and I take it from a sports aspect too, having short-term memory, but he also had a good insight from somebody else saying, when you're down, stay down for a couple seconds and feel that. So then when you get back up, you don't want to get back down. So it's kind of both sides of it, of feel that shit, but then you got to move on. Like don't soak in it. In a sense.
I'm gonna show you guys something real special. Be right back.
Yeah.
That was Tim Grover. That said that said
Michael Jordan's trainer.
Yeah, Dwayne Wade, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant's trainer. He was like, when I get knocked down,
that's a special man right there,
bro. That dude's a monster.
Again, never gonna keep me down, bro. Chumbawamba.
Chumbo.
Remember that song?
Yes, Chumbawamba.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. What do you have there? What's in your hands?
Yeah.
So this, I bought it for myself as a birthday gift. The only time I've ever done something like that in my life. 2 years ago. It is an ancient Greek.
Hold it back. No, back a little bit. Back a little bit so the camera can.
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
It's an ancient Greek coin, dating from 233 BC of Alexander the Great.
What?
It has Zeus sitting on a throne holding an eagle on the back. And so I wear this around my neck as a constant reminder that we should aspire to be like someone like Alexander the Great, who left his impact on society through culture, science, technology, in many, many ways, military. So this is a constant reminder that to be great or to strive for greatness. Amen. Because he died a long time ago, but to this day, his contributions are still here. And I am physically holding something from his time of him. So I need to step up and try to do some badass shit like that. Or die trying.
Hell
50,
yeah, bro.
50. Get rich or die
Hell yeah.
trying. It's funny.
And people don't take it wrong. Like we do say, like feel emotions. Like don't
Oh,
put them in a bag and throw them away. Feel them, understand them, but move forward.
well, this is why
Exactly.
we're doing this, because this is the way that Julian is going through his experience in this life, right? And I think something else that's really important about this podcast, and in particular for myself, that I've noticed so far is that I love hearing about the way that other people live their life. It's very fascinating to me, because we're all experiencing this thing, and you're going to get people that disagree, and that to me is also a basis for friendship for me. I need people that don't think the exact same way that I think. If I'm always around people that think the exact same way that I think, now I'm not talking about certain tenets as far as my core goes, but I need to be able to have disagreements with somebody to be able to understand a different perspective. Right?
Absolutely.
So did my mic go off? Did my mic cut
No,
out?
no, I'm just saying, like
Oh,
we have that, we have that dynamic.
Oh yeah, George and he's one of my best friends. Him and I have disagreed multiple times over our relationship together, and it's helped us become stronger because of the fact that we're able to have discourse around it. I think disagreement is something that's very vital in order to strengthen bonds.
Call you out on your shit.
Fuck yeah, bro.
If you're slacking, you're getting a
Fuck
little.
yeah.
People say it's toxic, but if you're putting on a little weight, your boy should like give you a little shit about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bro. George Michael says some shit sometimes, and I'm like, what the fuck? And I say shit sometimes that he's like, what are you talking about? And I go,
I say for the most part, I would say some things that are kind of about not outrageous, but like, right, I can't agree with you, and I'm just like, that's okay, man. We're gonna have to agree to disagree. Like,
yeah,
that's the beauty in it too.
100%.
As men, we can't be agreeable all the time. Like
Exactly.
a masculine trait is all it is. You can't be that's not a masculine trait, in my opinion, of being agreeable all the time. Because you have to learn through that discourse afterwards of not agreeing as well. So
even with my wife, okay, who I love more than anything on this earth, she is a strong fucking woman, right? I grew up with strong women around me, and just going back to our ancestors, the men would hunt and the women would literally take care of everything around the fucking village, whatever. While the men were gone hunting, if something were to come in, those women would have to defend themselves, right? So regardless, hunter-gatherers, all those types of things, it's one of those things that the idea of agreeableness is something that sometimes leads to timidness, and somebody goes against who they are. And if you're going against who you are, don't do that. Don't go against who you are. That's why you need to do that inner work, like you were talking about earlier, Julian. I love Stoic philosophy. Meditations is one of my favorite books. That's something else that I was going to mention was Amor Fati, and then I forget what the other one is, where you think about death, like you realize that your life is finite, and it might be Amor Fati as well, but it's one of those sayings that they have about surrounding death, right? And how Marcus Aurelius talks about, is my fate every single day when I wake up, is my fate to stay under these covers and be warm all day? No, fuck that. Get up and start doing something, right? That's not what your fate is that day, to be under those covers. And the same thing with Alexander the Great. I'm sure you've read the story where when he died, he wanted, his hand to be outside of the casket. And he wanted an open, I forget what the rest of it is, but he wanted to show that you can't take your riches with you, right? No doctor in the world could save him. All those types of things.
Doctors, yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that even he understood that people needed to see. This is finite. This is you can't take it with you. I love the saying that Denzel has. You never see a U-Haul behind a hearse, right? So it's the lasting effects, as you were saying, in terms of entrepreneurship, kind of tying it all back in together, leaving a lasting effect on people, right? Maya Angelou talks about people may forget what you did or what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So those things that you do that leaves behind that legacy of those people is so crucial. And as men, we're obviously all men here, and just talking about that is very important. Just even having these conversations, even for people that disagree with it. I'm cool with having this conversation with people that disagree. I was disagreeing with somebody the other day, about this type of thing, and how if we're afraid to talk and say something improper, then that sort of seeds progress. You can't be afraid to say things, right? And that's the whole idea of knowledge as well. disagreement breeds knowledge, because then you start to see what other people think. So anyways, that was definitely a little. I want to start doing jujitsu now, by the way. That's something.
Oh yeah,
Talking.
dude, we live like a couple minutes away.
Yeah, I know.
Academy's just down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. You cut out again.
He was just saying how much he wants to do jiu-jitsu and how he's been.
Yeah, because he told me, and it's like, I just got to figure out, dude, that's something else. That's another reason why this podcast has helped, because it's kind of sparked a little, I would say, yeah, definitely like giving some gas in my ass in terms of creating something. And we were talking about it last episode. Something that's helped is removing expectation from the first step that you're taking. Right. For me, I get this analysis paralysis sometimes, where it's like I think about the end. And when I'm thinking about the end, sometimes it stops me from just taking the first step. And so with this in particular, the intention was literally, maybe George and I just talked for an hour every week, but at least I get to talk to my boy. And what has come from that? We get to sit down with people like you. We get to sit down with other artists that we've had on, other people that we respect and admire. And it's literally fulfilled something.
You cut out.
Just from taking a simple step, right? It's fulfilled something so deep inside of me, right? That just, I learned so much more about George too, from like looking at all these conversations and things like this, man. It's just, yeah, I just want to say like, thank you. We're not finishing. I'm just saying thank you right here in the middle of this thing. It's been really interesting and fascinating to hear your perspective and how
you decide when we're done, or we can go forever.
No, thank you guys for having me on. This is my first public speaking event where we're talking about like my story.
Mm-hmm.
I had been invited on five other occasions to speak, but this is the first one I've accepted.
Why did you say yes to this one?
Because I felt comfortable with you, even though we only spoke briefly in person. It's like when I met you, there was like a vibe where I felt like, I don't want to say like safe, because safe sounds like so fragile, but
that's cool. I get it.
You know, like I felt like we could, you know, and so like that led to the whole Miami thing too. And I just felt comfortable, you know, and you know, when you feel comfortable in someone's presence, you know, I feel like my discernment in character and people is pretty on point. I've always been able to surround myself with good quality people that have integrity. And yeah, when I met you, like I was like, this guy, his character's good, you know? So that's why I accepted.
That means a lot, bro. I sincerely I appreciate that. Integrity is a big thing for myself as well. And that I felt the same way. Like I told you, I was telling Sky when we were driving home, I was like, you know, we only spoke briefly at the after party. I don't even know if it was for That's Amore. It might have been for
I think it was a triple feature night.
Yeah, it was the Holiday Harmony one. It was that whole, yeah, that's when we spoke afterward. And I told Sky the same thing. I'm like, God, man, that guy was so real. Because you know, you go it wasn't necessarily in that one. It's really in any setting. That's a Hollywood setting. And you go to a party and it's schmoozing and it's this and that. And like I said, people don't look you in the eye when they're talking to you. So that was one thing that I noticed, is that you actually were looking me in my eyes. You weren't sexing me, but I mean, you were just looking me in my eyes. I'm so stupid. I love making jokes. You were just looking at me and I was like, damn, dude, this guy, it's a real thing. You know, I was seeing something else on Instagram talking about male figures in lives and father figures in specifically. And it was a mother brings a boy into the world and helps to raise a boy, and a father turns that boy into a man, right? That's why it's important to have father figures. And, you know, the guy was talking about, for instance, when you meet somebody, stand up and shake their hand. Don't shake their hand while you're sitting down. Stand up, shake their hand, look them in the eyes. When you're walking on the curb with a woman, you walk on the inside of the curb, so your street side where the cars are, right? That's actually something my mom taught me specifically.
You know why that is?
What, in case you get hit? In case you get hit by a car?
That rule actually comes back from the time of horse carriages. And when horse carriages would come by,
The
they would
water.
splash. And so you'd put your girl on away from them, and then you would shield her from the horse carriages splash.
Wow. I just learned something new.
Yeah, I follow.
I love that. I didn't know that, but I do that all the time. That's actually something that Sky told me. She noticed when we first started dating. She's like, "Why do you always put me on the inside of the curb?" My mom always told me, in case a car comes, you're gonna be the one that gets hit. That's what my mom told me. So she's like, "You always stand on that side." And I was like, "All right." But I told
chivalry, man, chivalry.
Yeah, why do you do that? And I was like, I don't know. I just, it's something that a man should do is stand on the inside of the curb, so you're protected on that side. And she took to that. She was like, wow, that's super respectable.
It's just like
admirable.
It's like when you're divvying up the bed, right? The man should be closest to the door in case there's an intruder.
Break-in.
He can immediately get, as opposed to having to climb over the girl or her having her closest to the thread.
Unless I'm with Ronda Rousey, then Ronda's sleeping closer to the door. No, I'm just kidding. But that's yeah, dude. No, I 100% agree. That's the same thing I told Sky too when we moved into our apartment. It's just, man, more than anything, it's that whole idea of integrity, like you were talking about. I think that just going back to being an integrity-filled person, there's a lot of things that are going around nowadays that are devaluing certain things that some people want to do. Like I know a girl that she talks about how she really loves wanting to be a housewife and things of that nature. And I'm like, dude, building a home is one of the most integrity-filled jobs anybody can have. Being a mother, raising a family, that is one of the strongest jobs anybody can have, right? And there's sometimes there might be shame attributed to that, and I don't think that there should be. I think anybody should live their life the way that they see fit, to the most progressive way possible, to promote positivity and to promote progress, man. I think that it's a beautiful thing to build a family. A lot of people in my family did that. That's it. That was my tangent on that, on integrity.
Julian, I do have that jujitsu question.
Yeah.
But there is another question that kind of like popped in my head based off of well, before I say it, what reminded me of asking this question was how you mentioned brotherhood and having a time with other people other than your significant other. But the topic of this question is mentoring, which is, it's going to be a long-winded question. It's kind of be twofold in a sense, because we talked about mentoring and how you had mentors growing up and just learning in the industry. So the first question of this major topic is, how did you go, this again is for people listening, the young people of the world, how did you go about trying to, because it's very vague. I mean, like I've had talks about this in college with our professors, and how did you go about searching and keeping or getting in a relationship with a mentor? And then the second question is, since you've been in your industry for some time now, or you've done what you've done for some time, how do you go about mentoring somebody, or what do you recommend for someone to do to find a mentor and just to keep that open line to grow and learn from that person or persons?
Man, I'm so glad you asked. Mentorship is something I talk about all the time. So most people don't even have one mentor. And I think I have 13.
Wow.
And mentorship is a relationship in which someone with more experience can guide you in a topic or interest that you need growth in. Like I have 2 editor mentors. Ed Marks, he taught me Avid, and I did an old school style apprenticeship. So a lot of people these days, they're not willing to go the extra mile. But to learn Avid, which is the software that I use now to do all of our features, I went to his home every day for 6 months, worked crazy hours, 10 to 14 hours at times. I worked on 4 features with him. And I did everything he asked of me, and even learned how to make coffee, like the way he likes it, like pouring the boiling water manually over the beans.
A pour over.
Yeah, it's thanks to doing an old school style apprenticeship, and I worked for free just for like months. There was one job I got paid on, but having to drive out there and the opportunity to learn from someone that had cut set like 70 films
Wow.
was just priceless. And so I did it. And it's thanks to that that I'm able to do my job now flawlessly. And
How'd you
then
go about that intentionally though? To find, where you have intentions to look for a mentor, like you know you were going to a certain like
it kind of,
job, or it happened organically? Like, can you dive more into that?
so I have a good buddy named Brian Colvin, and he recommended me
Okay.
to Ed to learn Avid. Um, because like I was learning how to, I had already cut 4 features. So I was trying to learn how to next level myself. And like my current my current mentor now, Brett Hedlund, the editor I work with on all these ESX and Warner Brothers films.
That boy.
I one day asked to shadow him at
Okay.
on the Warner Brothers lot and to watch him how to edit. And then he has his own networking group, and there was like a mentorship group there. So that one we never really met, but I was invited into another mentorship group, which is an invitation only group run by Mary DeChambra and Q DeChambra. Mary is like one of the most phenomenal editors, and Q is an editor and assistant editor, and they run a group of professionals that the goal is to end up in ACE, which is like the upper echelon of editors. And there's a bunch of pods, I think like 5 or 6, and each pod has an editor that runs it, and they're all like top tier. Brett is my mentor in one of these pods, and just to show like the level is my peers in my pod, they were like House of Cards editors. Another one is was an Emmy nominated editor. So it's all like professionals that have already like made their mark or proven their credibility. And then basically to get to where I am now, I went the extra mile. So this company would have all these screenings on the Warner Brothers lot. And I, being new to film still, because I never went to film school or anything, I'm essentially self-taught. And I went to probably 15 different screenings up to midnight sometimes. And I'd watch all these different cuts of the film. Sometimes, like for a particular movie, I would go and watch the movie 4 different times on 4 different occasions where they had already made changes. And for me, it was like mini film school, and it got my face into the company where they became familiar with me. And then I would meet with him at lunch, ask questions. I'd go to the film networking groups, build a relationship and a friendship. And eventually, during the pandemic, there was an email saying we're looking for just an editor. And so as an editor, I dropped down a tier, but to work on bigger films. And so I did that. And now I've done 6 films with him. And as you know, like they've all been like top #1, #2 hits on Netflix and HBO. And I've been learning as I go with him. Let's see. I also have multiple producer mentors. And the thing is, it's like, and I have executive producer mentors as well. But the thing is, like with mentorship, it's not about asking them to do you favors. It's about absorbing knowledge and seeing that they are where you want to be and using that as like a guiding light to know that it is possible. Like out of all the mentors I have never asked a single one for a favor. Because my thing is I want to show that I can do it on my own, that I'm equally capable of climbing through any adversity and doing it on my own, and just having them see it and give their stamp of approval. you know? Because like on the come up, like people see you and they're like, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? And we've never even spoken. Like, at least have a conversation with me. But my thing is, I like to, I guess it maybe comes down psychologically to being a child back in the day when I was a kid, and people never noticed me. They never like saw me. And now it's like, ha, I can do it all on my own. Watch. And then I do it. And that's why I post the way I do. It's like my biggest thing is I love pointing to the stands and saying, I'm going to hit the ball there. Watch. And then I'll post and I'll do it and I'll knock it out of the park. And then in doing so, that adds credibility over time. And then you build your own brand, the brand of I walk the talk.
It sounds like in a sense that you're, like you say, you're never really asking that person for a favor or how to do things, but it's more of, hey, I'm here, I want to learn, I admire who you are, which obviously kind of might feed the ego of that person, but it's also of, but if you need me to do a favor for you, I'm here to do it too because I want to learn.
So my thing is
kind of like interning in a sense.
I'm at a point in my career where I hire my mentors. I have hired multiple mentors. They're on my film, pay the retainers. Now it's like any investment in time and energy they put in me is now coming back to them. Where, and the second part of your question was, in relation to, am I mentoring now? I am. I'm mentoring, I think, 5 individuals. Only one has been the one that has been hitting the pavement and doing the work and listening and applying my knowledge, my wisdom. And it's that one editor who I was able to recommend to his first feature. So it's because he showed that he was a go-getter. He stayed in contact. We've met for lunch, and I recommended him to his first feature. He got the job. He cut the film. You could see like some of the posts on my Instagram that he let me post. And he goes on to cut this film, and it won dozens of awards. And that's all because he was humble enough to reach out to me, even though he's a little bit older than me, to acknowledge that like he wants to get to where I am. And so in return, like as an editor myself, as I move up to cut my films, I'm grooming him to be my assistant so I can give him work, you know?
Interesting.
And it's like the best part about film is working with the people that you like, whose company you enjoy.
Yeah.
And I get to make film with my friends now. That's like my favorite thing about working at ESX and Warner Brothers is that all the people I work with are just such wonderful people, and I love their company. And it's like a dream come true because all I've ever wanted to do was to work with my friends. And so now that I'm moving the direction of creating my own films, I can create my ventures with my friends and continue working with them till the end of my days. And that's like living the dream, you know? And back to mentoring, I am in a place where I am now, because I don't have children. I'm 37, be 38. I don't have children. My legacy as it is right now is going to be the lives that I touch. And I am now mentoring other professionals. And I have been trying to write a book for like the last 12 years, and it's kind of changed over time. But I have an outline for it, and it's all the wisdom and knowledge and everything we've talked about, a lot of things we talked about today, on how I've been able to exponentially grow to achieve. I mean, in the short time I've been in LA, I've worked on 16 feature films, and that includes the first couple of years where I'd never worked on a film, and the pandemic where everything was shut down. And I've also developed my own IPs, my own films that have like my sci-fi script has gotten raving reviews from a lot of accomplished professionals. And I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about mentorship.
Where were we?
No,
You were talking about mentorship. But I mean, you kind of hit
yeah,
on all those beautiful points. I didn't mean to cut you off there. Go ahead. Continue.
I know I just remembered it was the book. So my legacy, I hope to, because I used to write like long Instagram posts on mentality and blah blah blah, but I realized that my audience is a little smaller than it's it's not as big as it could be for me to try to make an impact that way. So I decided to write a book. And it's that book in which I hope to pass on all the knowledge and the wisdom that I've used in the last 15 years to help other people uh, make their dreams a reality. And hopefully, in the pursuit of that, in the pursuit of becoming their authentic selves, find out what their purpose in life is. Because dreams and purpose in life aren't necessarily the same thing.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think that's going to help a lot of people that listen to this, because we're definitely in an age where you can get an education, but once you're in the real world, and that's where you really start to learn and grow as a person. And the growth doesn't stop once you graduate. That's just you're opening the door to life, I think, in my opinion. And mentoring helps a lot. Like, I've had mentors in the past and currently. So, and you're right. You're not going there to ask for favors. You're going there to learn and then offer yourself to that person. Because you're learning as you offer yourself for services or just to learn in general. So yeah, I mean, that answered my question pretty well. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And then Isaac, if you have a question, then I could ask the jiu-jitsu one a little later if you want.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things in terms of helping people that are listening to this that are coming up. Well, the first thing of you just talking about that, George, I like the saying where it's, you don't have to rebuild the Great Wall of China. You should stand on the shoulders of giants that came before you, right? It's that whole idea that people have come before you, and if you admire and respect them, seek out that wisdom. And exactly, I think mentorship is huge. I mean, I have a mentor that showed me who and what acting really is. I didn't know what it was before I met this guy. And then I was like, oh, that guy speaks my language. I can learn a lot from this guy. And I have. He's been incredibly resourceful. His name is Russ Blackwell. He's unbelievable. The question that I have specifically for people that are wanting to get into this is about specifically finding those mentors and networking, right? What's your strategy in terms of finding them? Do you hit up Facebook groups? Do you hit up Instagram, DM? Like, how do you scavenge and sort of try to navigate to find those specific mentors that you are looking for? What did you employ in terms of finding those people?
Very good question. So upon moving here, I didn't have any friends. I didn't have a network at all. Started from scratch, ground zero. I had to hit the pavement and go to networking events. Even before I moved here, I flew to Produce by conference to do what? To network.
How did you find that conference?
I think it was Google. I just found it online, maybe, or maybe it was Facebook. I saw a sponsored ad, something. But networking is everything. And you have to, I mean, for me personally, I think almost every single mentor I have met in person or at the beginning. I think there was one EP mentor I had that I had only spoken to on the phone. But everyone else, I developed a relationship with in person through networking in person. Because how do you know you want to learn from someone and invest in them if you haven't met them?
Mm-hmm. And that says a lot too, of that person that's taking initiative to want to meet you. I guess you could say that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if someone's, like you said, like you put in, like you mentioned all the people you're mentoring right now, but the one you see that's succeeding in that relationship with you, or just their first showing up and making,
He knocked it out of the park. I'm so proud of him.
he's like taking the time to reach out to you and keeping that open line consistently, and he's applying the things he's learned from you.
And such an important thing to touch on is gratitude. I try to show gratitude in anything and everything that positive that comes my way, especially if it comes from another person. And my mentee, he has shown a tremendous amount of gratitude for me opening that door for him. And what does that do? That makes me not only proud of him, but that makes me want to help him more because he shows his character. You know, and there's a lot of people in this world that are ungrateful when you do good things for them. And how does that make you feel? It makes you feel used. So if someone does something for you from like the bottom of your heart, thank them. And my mentee did that. He does that. And so that makes me want to develop a lifelong relationship with him. And as I move forward and I start cutting all my own films, guess who's going to be assisting me?
Merit goes a
It's true.
long way. When people show you something, again, listen with your eyes type of thing. You see it. And I like the saying, a rising tide floats all ships, right? I think I wanted to mention that earlier on as well, because with your goals and the lasting legacy that you want to leave behind, that's a rising tide. So the people that are, in that area, your mentees specifically, it floats all ships, right? They're elevated if they understand that tide is going up, right? It's when you take ego out of the equation, I think that's a big thing that we've spoken about as well. It takes a lot of work to get your ego out of the way to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I love and admire you, and I want to, shadow you or learn from you. You gotta understand that's that student mentality. We can always learn from people, right? That's a big thing that I try to take away as well, is that I'm always seeing something that I could learn from other people. I don't ever think that I'm better than anybody else personally.
We can learn something from everyone, and from the good and the bad.
Absolutely.
So we can learn at every moment from the things that do happen and things that don't happen. It's like failing forward, essentially. Like growing up as a kid, my business ventures, I wouldn't say they were all successful, but I failed forward. And since I'm since age 24, 25, I haven't failed because I got the failing out of the way.
Mhm.
So now everything I do is a success.
Yeah, people need to hear that.
Hit that jujitsu
Like, some
question.
people would probably take that as being pompous. Yeah, I'm excited for this. Okay, so, and it might be a real simple answer, but my question is going to be somewhat long-winded. So, jujitsu. I like MMA. I listen to Joe Rogan. He talks about it a lot. The gym I go to, it's a 2-story gym. On the second floor, it's more of like athletic performance. So I come from an athletic background. So I like to go up there to warm up and do half my workouts there. And then I'll go downstairs and do more like heavy lifting. But what I noticed from watching firsthand and listening to Joe Rogan, a buzzword in the jiu-jitsu community, correct me if I'm wrong, is sequences or progressions, right? So when I peep the mats, I usually don't see them roll right away. If they are, it's in a certain sequence, like someone's on their back and they have to figure out how to defend themselves, or vice versa, or just certain movements. And then I realized at the end, because I'm upstairs for a long time, then they start to really roll and it's more open format. And now you can kind of use the tools you were sharpening for the better half of the class, right? So with that context I'm giving you, if you can explain more of that to people listening, what that is, because that might sound a lot of jargon if you don't know about mixed martial arts or jiu-jitsu, what that is exactly, like sequences and progressions, and then how do you, because I'm pretty sure you do, how do you apply that to your personal life or even just your professional life of sequences and how to move from point A to B to C, D, et cetera, et cetera.
I got you. All right.
Yeah.
So fun fact, Joe Rogan is actually a black belt at our academy.
What? In Texas? In LA or Texas?
Here. So he's a John
Okay.
Jock Machado black belt and also 10th Planet black belt.
Yeah.
So I trained at John Jock's here in Woodland Hills, which our old academy was on Tarzana, but Rogan's one of us.
Damn.
The sequences, so class is split in like the first hour or first 45 minutes is all technique. And usually there's like a curriculum over the week, which is like a progression that's taught. One day is like A and B, and it's like full moves that from start to finish. But then over the next few days, it's a progression of that whole lesson. But every academy is different. That's how my coach back in Texas would do it. The whole week would be like one big lesson plan, and everything would build. And then there's a saying called "drillers make killers." Mm-hmm. So you don't drill something until you get it right. You drill it until you can't get it wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's like anything else in life. It's like with perfectionism isn't the goal. With art, it's your average should be better than someone else's perfect. Your everyday muscle memory in what you do should be at such a high level that it's good enough for you, and that's the equivalent of perfection for other people. So that's like editing, right? Or anything else. Like Picasso, his best, his average and worst day would be better than a majority of regular artists. And so like the first part of class is drilling to learn sequences, and you break down the steps into step by step, and slow is fast. There's a saying. So you learn, and you don't skip, and you don't go fast, because the point is to not win drilling, is to learn the moves. And the same can be applied for anything else in life, especially professional career. And then the last part of class is the live sparring, the rolling. That's where you get to go, you get to flow roll, or you get to go 100%. Depends on how you're training with that partner. But usually it's not really flow rolling. It's like one person dials it up and the next person dials it up, and then
Like
it's
a pissing contest.
And then you battle with your boys, and it's like you have your teammates that it's like you roll like casually but hard with, and then you have your boy where it's like Goku and Vegeta. It's like there can be no peace. We all have a teammate like that. Coach looks over and he's like, "Oh, it's you guys again." It's like just going like just you battle it out because it's your boy, and you might get your ass whooped, but
I hear these talks all the time in the sauna in the same gym. Like there's like one guy's like, "Man, this freaking guy just rollerbladed. You just try to kick my ass." And then my other boy was in here that it's more playful. It's funny that you have like those certain partners in crime.
One of my favorite things is like I'm training with boys. I love talking shit. Like talking shit when you're training, like when you're rolling. Like it's so funny. Like the other day, I gave a middle finger to my training partner while we were rolling, and what did he do? He wrist locked me.
No,
but it was worth it. Worth it.
Yeah,
I'll
funny.
Take the pain to flick him off in the middle of a roll. I mean that brought me joy. That's fun. If you're not having fun, then
talking shit is a part of any athletic venture.
We talked about that between our friends in one of the episodes.
Yeah, with Rose.
Yeah, I think you were saying like there's always a dynamic. It's never toxic, but it's just male banter of.
Yeah,
like,
bro.
If anyone's gonna kick you in the ass, it's your
shit.
friends, it's your boys.
You have to talk shit, bro. Well, I mean,
it goes back to that brotherhood of like.
Yeah,
you poke the bear with your friends,
bro. It's competition.
No love lost.
It's healthy competition, right? Because you talk shit, and then one wins, one loses, and you say good game. You bested me.
One of my favorite things is I won't. He's a brown belt. He's a couple levels higher than me, and I love talking shit to him. I mean, he just like is always gonna fucking just crush me. He just smashes me, right? But it's fun, like talking shit while the ship is sinking.
Yeah. Just like a never die attitude. Just like, fuck you and this boat.
and that's one of the reasons why jiu-jitsu is so great, man. It's like, I'll tell you, honestly, in the last 10 so I've trained martial arts 15 years. Jiu-jitsu, I did kung fu before jiu-jitsu. They overlapped for 1 year. So jiu-jitsu about 10. We're talking active training, it's 8.5. And in those years, man, like some of the best friends in my life have been made through jiu-jitsu. One thing's having friends, but when you sweat together, you bleed together, you prepare for competition, where you go against other schools, and you're at a competition with 5,000 people standing around you, and everyone's families and girlfriends and coaches and teams are screaming like, submit him, like, and you're going 100%, people like get injured and stuff. It's like, when you come back from that and you go back to your home gym and you rework your weaknesses, it's your boys and your coach trying to help you get better. And that's camaraderie that you don't get anywhere else. Even like hockey, like martial arts, MMA, jiu-jitsu, they call it like kind of like lonely sport because it's you out there, but at the end of the day, it's all the people that helped you get to where you are that are there with you. And that kind of camaraderie you don't get in other sports. Because you're literally like, it's like do or die. You're fighting,
Do you do competitions, Julian? You do competitive?
My last one was about a year ago. I've done, I think, 14 or 15.
Oh shit, you've done quite a bit.
Can you go against like the same type of color belt as the other person, or is it a weight class? How does that go?
In my last one, I went up against guys my level and then one above.
What belt are you?
I'm a blue belt.
That's
I've been
solid, dude.
I've been
I
blue
don't.
for 7.5, 8 years.
Oh,
But
so
I did karate. I did karate and kung fu when I was a child, and something about blue belt that like people stay
It's
there for a while sometimes, right?
it's different. It's different. So like in Kung Fu,
Okay.
I'm like a second degree black belt, and that only
Oh
took
shit.
6.5 years.
Yeah.
But like jujitsu is like the real, like no bullshit art. Like you can't.
my brother-in-law is a black belt. I think I told you.
That's amazing.
He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and when he became a black belt at his gym or whatever it's called, at his dojo, he had to like swear to certain tenets of a lifestyle, right? When he eventually got to it, it was something like it's I don't think sobriety might have been something along the lines of it, but it was a lot of things that were not even necessarily to just first off, he's nearing 50 now, and he's been doing it for like 25 years. He's been rolling. And he became a black belt a few years ago. So he had to go through a rigorous process to even become a black belt. And just seeing him go through that, I was like, damn, dude, it is a dedication on another level in order to even get to that point.
Jiu-jitsu's for the real ones
Yeah.
because it forces you to look at yourself every day. Like when you after you train, like it's known as like the jiu-jitsu shower. You're in the shower. It could be like a 45-minute shower where it's like the water's just hitting you, and then you haven't even showered yet. You're just sitting there thinking about all the shit that you could have done better during the live roll.
Do you lift also, or do you just go to jujitsu? Is that like your athletic
So are we talking about when I'm
regiment?
slacking? Or are we talking about when I'm preparing for competition?
When you're slacking, when you're slacking.
When I'm slacking, lift a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
If
Would you
I'm
say that's counterintuitive though? Like that's why you don't lift as much as you as like
like if you compete, like number one, like I was lifting more than training, and my coach had me flip it after my last comp, more jujitsu, less lifting, but it's good to have like do strength and conditioning.
okay.
But as long as you're getting your mat time, that's like what's been like etched into my brain in the last year since my last comp is more jujitsu, less lifting. But when everything is equal, when two people are equally skilled, the physical attributes that are superior will dominate. And in competition, everyone like a lot of them lift too. So you need to have a solid athletic base because if you don't have like the muscle to defend like an arm bar, like the basic physical strength, you're gonna get your arm ripped, you know. So you have to do some. Plus, like when you're weighing in for weight classes and everything, you'd rather be lean and on the bigger side than be a little fluffy, competing against guys at the same weight that are stacked, with muscle, lower body fat. So you want to have your diet dialed in. You want to be in good shape. That doesn't mean that you can't like compete successfully and be a beast without lifting. But if it's like a physical event such as fighting, then obviously physical attributes are very important too.
Dude, so I rolled this one time in Burbank at this one gym. I don't even remember the name of it, but I rolled there and I got paired up with this guy. It was free flow too. They didn't teach anything into class. It was just kind of like get in there and start rolling. And I don't know what I'm doing. But anyways, I'm rolling with the guy. He taps me like for 30 minutes straight. This guy is just fucking tapping me. I'm getting worked. I'm drenched. After like 30 seconds of the first, like when we're first starting, I'm drenched, bro. It is unreal. And then afterward, we're talking as we're in the locker room or whatever. And he was telling me, he's like, you're stronger than me. And I go, what? He goes, yeah, you're strong. If we went to go work out right now, without rolling or whatever, you'd be able to lift more than I would. Just you're stronger than me. I can tell. You just don't know what you're doing. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah. And that's something that, again, gave me greater respect for the whole martial art of jujitsu, just because if your technique is not as good as somebody else's, they can work you up, down, sideways, all over the mat. And it's you might get lucky because you're a little stronger. Obviously, if somebody's like 6'10" and somebody's 5'5", that's a little different, right? I mean, it still might happen, but it's one of those things that we were both similar statures. And I was just in better shape than he was, but he was like, bro, you just don't know what you're doing. If you stick with jujitsu, you'll be able to work me up and down the mat. And I was like, what? It was crazy. It was
For
wild.
sure.
It was wild. It blew my mind. That is one thing about it.
Julian,
That
how
blew
does
my
that work
mind.
with belts? With belts and weight class? How does that work for like
Uh,
for tournaments? Do you have to be the same belt and weight class, or how does
yeah.
it? Can if you can?
Yeah, and it's even further divided into age groups too.
Okay.
Adults is like 18 and up, then masters begins at 30 plus.
Okay.
So like there's like Nogi Worlds, which is 18 and up. Then there's Masters Worlds. Um, the more prestigious one would be to win the 18 and up. But yeah, it's age, there's skill levels, which are belts, or in the gi, in the karate pajamas, it looks like it's by belt color, but in nogi it's by beginner or intermediate, which is a couple of different ranks, then advanced is a couple of different ranks. And you can have MMA guys, wrestler guys, sambo guys drop in there. Um, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That goes into my next question that I had for a couple minutes, like 5 minutes ago. What was your deciding factors to do no gi versus gi?
Well, I actually
That's a good
I
question.
started at a no-gi school in Texas.
Okay.
I prefer no-gi.
Why is that?
So in SoCal, like in my opinion, like when it comes to real world self-defense, you want a basic, simple weapon that's not complicated, that always works. So if you grab someone's t-shirt, like gis are like double stitched, they're thick. If you grab someone's t-shirt, it could rip. So I don't want to spend all my time mastering something that could maybe not work. But if you guillotine someone, that neck is always going to be there. All those no-gi techniques are always going to be there. Plus, it's more fun. Like it's faster, it's more athletic, it's more fun to watch, it's more fun to do. But I trained no-gi for about 2.5 years only back in Texas. I moved here, and then at the academy I'm currently at, there was no no-gi on the schedule for years. And so I trained in the gi exclusively for I think 4.5 years. And then we added gi back on, or no gi back on, and now I'm getting to roll no gi, which is I love no gi. But learning jujitsu here at like the Mecca Jiu-Jitsu, John Jacques Machado, it's you got to learn both, and you can't rank up without the gi.
Okay.
I
have so,
I no gi all day.
I have a question about
you cut out. You cut out.
Oh.
You're good now. You're good now.
I have a question about the ranking up, because that's like something that I've always wondered. I've never done martial arts, which I wanted to say also, George, you did kung fu and karate as a child?
Briefly, I did taekwondo. This was in kindergarten. I've stopped immediately though, because I was starting to fight kids in after school care.
That's funny. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So Julian, what's the process for like leveling up on belts or ranking up on belts? I literally know nothing about it. Is it like a specific time of the month that they say, okay, now you're going to do a showcase type of thing? You're gonna do it in front of your senseis. Like, what is that? I don't know how that works.
That's how it was in Kung Fu. Back home in Texas, so I haven't ranked up here at John Jacques in my entire time in California, so I can't tell you how it's done there. You get what you put in, and apparently I haven't put in enough. Very obviously I have not, because if I did, I would be a purple belt. But in Texas, to get my blue, so that was a competition school in which everyone had to compete like all the time. And so I did 10 competitions. My last 3 at white belt, I won all golds. And I submitted everyone. So after I submitted everyone and won multiple golds in competition, then there was a day, it's like a surprise, coach lines up everyone in the back. And I don't know if it's still like that, but back then you get called to the center of the room. You have to demonstrate 3 to 4 techniques in every position. And then in front of everyone, you test in front of everyone. And then you get your belt if you pass. But back then it was through competition and then testing. At John Jacques, I don't know if mean, a lot of people compete, but it's attendance and your overall, what I've learned is it's like your overall grasp of jujitsu and your mastery of the positions and the techniques that are in those positions and chaining things together. But it's like I said, I haven't ranked up at John Jock, so when I do, I'll be able to tell you.
That's so
Because you said you need to rank up via gi, not no gi, right?
It's both.
Oh, it's both. Okay. That's interesting, man. I mean, you cut out Isaac. You cut out.
I've slacked a bit at in jiu-jitsu here in California. I go in spurts where I hit it really hard and then work happens, and like the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks of any movie at ESX, I see no daylight.
Yeah.
And then like the last 3 weeks of a movie, life's crazy and I see no daylight. So I don't get to train for about 6 weeks every movie. We do 4 movies a year. That's a lot of weeks not training. And then I come back from those hiatuses and it's hard to get back in. And
That's half a year that you're out of training.
It's in it.
Yeah.
But
Seems like sometimes it's jujitsu in a sense. From what I've seen, like people talk about it, is there's and you can move into both spectrums or both sides. I mean, that for some people it's like there's certain moments in their lives where they're striving to like get better and like upgrade belts, and then there's certain moments in your life, like you're saying, for instance, organically, that you're just so busy with work that you're using it more as just like an outlet and like a side thing. Is that accurate?
yes, that's very
Okay.
accurate. I mean,
Okay.
for me, like I kind of had a toxic relationship with jiu-jitsu the last 9 years. For me, it was always do or die. Like it was fighting. And so I'd go into class and I just try to like smash people, and it was about who tapped who how many times instead of me trying to get better. But my coach, I have a coach that I've been working with this last year. He's completely reframed how I approach jiu-jitsu. It's not toxic anymore. And I was putting a lot of pressure on myself before. And this is the first time I'm actually having a lot of fun with jiu-jitsu and actually enjoying it for what it is. So
That's awesome.
Damn.
That's awesome.
Damn.
That's life, man. That's life, man. That's definitely. Were you think it was because you're very obsessed with like the end result or just conquering your opponent? Well, why you think it felt toxic to you?
So I come from like back in Texas, we would have like gym rivalries, and it was really important about who tapped who, how many times. And I kind of brought that with me here.
Okay.
But not every academy is the same way. But like I wouldn't say that's toxic because that's the atmosphere back home. But the way I was handling it on my own was toxic.
Do you think it was because that was like the only focus instead of like having both sides of the coin? Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Like I would go in and just try to leg lock people and tap them instead of letting go of what I'm really, really good at and developing the rest of my game, developing a game. I don't mind his head when he hears that. What game?
That makes sense, bro. I think that's something really
That's
important.
man.
That's really important as well in just a creative ventures. As an actor, you always want to be pushing yourself. For myself, it's like always pushing the boundaries. Matthew McConaughey was talking about how, just to like kind of see how that bleeds into everything else as well. He was talking about when he stepped away from the rom-com world. We talked about this too. He was like, he would get a script and he knew that he could do it with his eyes closed. And he's like, this is not challenging me, right? You're always trying to look for that challenge. The obstacle is the way type of thing. And that's such an important thing in life, is to, you know what you're good at and then work on stuff that you're not good at as well. And for the love of the game, right? Would you say that your coach has kind of instilled the love of the game back into you in terms of the jiu-jitsu, and that helped as well? Oh, am I frozen?
I'm a stubborn son of a bitch that like the anime character, man. I stuck through the suck, but I'm finally enjoying it for the first time.
Yes.
But it's always been about friends, man. Like I go because I get to see my homies.
Community.
Amen.
That's a very special community, the jiu-jitsu community. Definitely. I see that at my gym. Definitely. Very chill guys, real cool guys. I catch like one or two of them in the sauna and just talk about MMA and things of that nature. And it's a pretty cool Because like you said, it's very unique. It's not a team sport, but it is a community. So like when you go to competitions, yes, you're representing yourself and where you are in your life and jujitsu skills and mastery, but it's like your team's there. Everybody that helped you sharpen your sword and you went to battle with in practice are there, and they're on their journey too, but you're there in, like in a team sense. And I saw that firsthand too from like wrestling in high school, like watching wrestling matches in the gym,
Yeah.
in the basketball gym.
There's a couple fun things about competitions. Well, not one of them is fun, the other one's not so much. But it's like when you see your boy competing and you see him pull off a move on his opponent that he does to you, you're like, oh, he does that. There's like memes about it. Oh, he does that to me. But since it is them out there, but when they don't win or they lose, or they get submitted, they get injured, like you feel bad too.
Yeah.
But you just got to be there for them. You know, it's that camaraderie.
It's important, bro.
Definitely.
Brotherhood.
Yeah, I can see that. Like you go back to the gym and you're like, yo, let's work on this so that doesn't happen to you again.
Dude, I have a question for you, Julian, to bring it back to something else we were talking about earlier. You said you're a sci-fi guy. Bro, have you ever read The Three-Body Problem?
Yeah,
Woo!
I've not.
You haven't? Bro.
No, what is it?
DB Weiss and David Benioff, who are the co-creators, or not the creators, but they're the guys that made the TV show for Game of Thrones. They're doing this for Netflix. And it's Netflix's biggest television series. I believe the one that they're paying the most for. I could be off on that. But anyways, it's this Chinese writer. His name is Cixin Liu. I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong or her name wrong. I don't even know if it's a man or a woman. Anyways, I don't want to give too much of it away. It's one of the best sci-fi series or 3 books that I've ever read. The Three-Body Problem. It is, how can I describe it? It deals with video games in a sense. There's like a sort of VR attached to it. It deals with outer space, and it deals just like with realities. It is so fascinating. It is one of the best book trilogies I've read in a long, long time. I highly recommend it if you're into sci-fi. Highly recommend it. The Three-Body Problem.
Okay, we'll check it out.
It is super fire.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. Are you a reader? Do you like to read a lot?
I was one when I was growing up.
What does that
Not
mean?
so much anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna
but
say, what does that mean? You
check.
were one.
I used to be a book nerd when I was a kid.
And why'd you step away from
And
what's happened in life that made you step away from reading?
gaming, ADD, computers, gaming, the attention span dwindling.
I mean, you spend most
from the get-go.
Yeah, and most
I've never been a big reader.
Oh, I got into it when I was in college. That's honestly when I started. I hated reading, and then I got into it when I was in college. But you spend most of your time. I mean, dude, the edits that you do, I find editing, to be completely honest, that's sincerely to me when the true magic of a movie comes together, or a film, is in the edit, because you can tell 100 different stories by the way that you edit something. I guess I actually do have a question about this. How do you, when you are strictly the editor, what is your strategy that you employ in terms of, are you following the director's vision? What is the way that you decide which direction in which to edit? How does that happen? What's that process? Because I've never been in an editing room, so I've never. Well, I have
director's
been,
vision
small things.
comes
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
life. The director's vision comes to life during the director's cut. But when you first get to the project, like if you as an editor are not watching 100% of the footage and learning every nuance of every take to know what is happening where and how the emotions are carrying through, then you shouldn't be editing. So the editor has to become extremely familiar with all the subject material, and they do their first cut, the assembly. It's the assembly that the director will sit down and say, okay, let's start tweaking it. I mean, sometimes like in the films I cut, I didn't know the director at all until after my assembly. So how could I know the director's vision or what their feel was until we sat down and they went through the notes that they gave on that first cut? So that first cut as an editor is where you put your touch and who you are. Then the director comes in, and then they put their overall feel and their vision, and then you lock essentially between the two of you, and then the producers come in, and then the producers give their notes, and then if there's a studio, then they give their notes after all that.
Wow.
So the first go is the editor's vision and their feel and how they want to cut it. Then the director comes in and says, no, 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 or yes, yes, this works, this doesn't work. And then you fine tune it together.
I am so sorry for your edits for That's a More, that you had to see every nuance of Isaac on that screen. I feel so sorry for you.
Dude, it was joy. Wow, that was such a joy. I loved working on that.
No, I was just kidding. It was an amazing time. It was a special little thing. Yeah, that was like the little engine that could. That's how I described that movie. It's like the little engine that could.
I'll tell you what though, those kitchen scenes were complicated.
Oh,
A lot of camera angles, lots going on.
and I remember when we had to shoot that, there was like 2, 4, 6, 9 people, 10 people in those scenes sometimes. And on a day, right, the way that you want to shoot things typically is you shoot a master, then you shoot point of views, right, and then you shoot inserts for just a typical sort of shooting. For the master, it's easy, but then you start to shoot the point of views. And I remember we had 10 people, and I'm like, we have to get 10 people's point of views for this one sort of section of the movie. I was like, damn, this is going to be, I was very impressed with the way that you guys were able to carry the story forward with all of those people in that tiny room, because you don't want to have the feeling of the movie stilted because you're just trying to fit every single person's perspective in the movie, right? You want it to flow. And I think you guys did that beautifully. Specifically, that's the meat and potatoes of that movie are the kitchen scenes. And you guys, really, not to be punny, but that's the meat and potatoes of that movie are those kitchen scenes. And you guys were able to capture everyone's perspective, their opinions on. Anyways, that's something that I was really impressed with.
For people that don't know Spanish, he said it's really sunny outside and it's a beautiful day.
That's exactly what I said. Yeah, man, that's beautiful, dude. I mean, we've been doing this, boys, for like 2.5 hours already at this point. So it's really up to you guys how we continue.
Julian, my last question, since it sounds like we might wrap it up. We might wrap it up a little bit. Well, I have 2 questions. Like, we have a closing question, and then just to harp on editing. For those people that don't know anything about editing or post-production, because I follow everything. That's why I haven't asked this question yet, but I thought maybe I should ask this. Because I do sound engineering, so I studied post-production and just how to add sound clips and Foley and all that jibber jabber. If you can give a layman's definition of what editing is and what you do for those people like that are listening to this and be like, what the hell are they talking about editing? What is that? If you can kind of give your spiel on that.
That's a great question. Editing is the invisible art. You only notice it when it's bad.
Yeah.
If you are watching something and you are taken out of what's happening, it might be because there's a cut that didn't work. It's thankless because you don't notice good editing unless it's very active and it's stylistic, but you don't notice good editing. But the thing about editing, like the nuances of editing, is I was watching something that was old the other day. It might have been like it was Revenge of the Nerds. I saw it the other night. And as an editor, watching it, it's like I agree with the cuts that were made when they were made. It's like when you are an editor and you recognize good editing, you feel the flow and you agree with what you're seeing, when you're seeing it, and how you're seeing it.
Okay.
But people that don't know what editing is, they might think that the film is just shot all in one take, or they just don't know. But when you see bad editing, that's when you really know.
Can you explain more? Can you dive deeper on more the technical level? Like, what are you doing on Avid? What is Avid? What are you doing on your computer in your workstation?
Avid is a non-linear editing program.
Mhm.
It's the workhorse of Hollywood. There's two others. If you're talking market share, Premiere is like 1% of all feature films. And there was Final Cut. I learned on Final Cut originally.
Mhm.
Final Cut was awesome. And then Premiere came out. But Avid has been the workhorse for Hollywood since the inception of it, right? But I didn't come up in Hollywood. So I worked on Premiere and television back in Houston. It's very prosumer, but the real workhorse is Avid. That's
And
what
what are you doing on there? Like you're moving, just so people understand, you're moving clips, you're shortening clips, right? You're like changing field of like POVs of like multiple takes, things like that, right?
yeah. So you have something called a timeline, and then you have a bin of all your clips,
Mhm.
and they're all sorted by take. Um, and you watch all the footage. You decide like you might start off with the master at the head of the scene, and then as the scene progresses, you start cutting in specific shots that direct the emotional through line and the context of what's happening. You direct the viewer into that. It's a very fine-tuned art. And like I said, you only really notice when it's bad or it's exceptionally good and stylistic.
Yeah, I can relate that a lot to sound engineering and like mix engineering for songs. Like it's just fine tuning the emotional aspect of the movie or the song, so certain points are accentuated more than others, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
definitely. There's a whole lot that goes into editing. I mean,
Oh, there's so much.
my editor mentor Ed, he trained me to watch films on mute
Mm.
because if you can tell a story just visually, then you're doing your job as a picture editor. When you add sound, that really brings it to life and score, sound effects. But you should be able to tell your story with picture only, no sound.
I remember doing an exercise
Yeah.
like that in post.
Yeah, if you do that, then you're doing your job.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, I mean, this is why
Major key.
I love film and specifically film, because in theater you can get away with it. What you just said right there is applicable to acting as well. An actor, I took a class, a master class with Jason Alexander, who was on Seinfeld and stuff like that. Can you guys still hear me? It says my connection's unstable. You can still hear me?
No, you're good. You're good. You're
Okay.
good. You're just lagging.
Yeah.
The audio's good though.
Okay, good. So he said you should be able, so actors a lot of times they and I'm going to butcher this a little bit, they try to go up there and just emote, right? They try to just emotionally do something. However, if you look at the word actor, actions are in there. So an audience should be able to put their TV on mute, look at what you're doing, and understand what the story is that's happening, right? If you're able to actively portray what you are doing, then you are doing your job, right? At least that's how you should try to go about it. Emotions are obviously a part of that, but if you're just trying, you could have the most emotional scene, being so invested in it, crying and everything, but then that doesn't explain the fact that you're at a baseball game, right? And there's a giant dust storm coming, right? That doesn't show what's happening. That just shows that somebody's crying. So you're like, oh, that person's sad or whatever it is. Anyways, what I'm trying to get at is that what you just said is the perfect melding and merging of both sides when everything is working properly, right? So if an actor is able to do their job to the top of their ability in that sense, and then you are able to tell the story like that, then it becomes the merging of both worlds. For me, this is so invaluable to hear, because then now I know what an editor's perspective is. So that brings up another question. How do you feel about knowing or learning a little bit about all the other roles in a film set? How is that beneficial? Maybe it's not beneficial. What are your thoughts on like knowing what an actor's perspective is, or what a director or a DP's perspective? Does that come into play at all in terms of your editing and things like that?
For post-production, absolutely. The more time you spend with directors, I mean, every director is different, but it comes down just to the art of storytelling. Where an emotional through line, where the focus of the scene is. When dialogue editing is like the most intricate, important part of editing. Knowing who to be on at what time and what reactions to show is what really brings a conversation to life. You can cut a conversation in many different ways, but most of them will be incorrect and there will be the correct. Like I had my very first paid feature. I cut the film and like the dialogue editing, I thought upon my first pass was correct, but when we went through the producer's notes, there was a total like recut of the dialogue because I hadn't really been focusing on the right people at the right time, the reactions, or even the best performances. It's the performances. And one part of one performance might be the segment that you want here, and this other take had this clip right here better. And then that's editing. It's you don't necessarily use all one take. You use selected pieces of every take, which has the best performance for what you are trying to cohesively put together.
Magic.
I know exactly what that feels like, especially with post-production fucking sound engineering.
It is magic.
Yeah, it is.
It's magic, dude. It's literally magic. That's why so just I have had the extreme pleasure of being able to watch some phenomenal actors in front of me and just seeing the way that they gear up towards getting ready for a scene, seeing how they interact when they drop a line in the middle of a scene, understanding what to do, when to do it, how to act on a master versus your close-up. There's just so many different facets of the game that you don't know how to do unless you're in it, right? And that's something that I wish that they taught more of, but it is what it is. I've learned you seek out plenty of education out there to find out, but that just it's all such magic. That's why I always give props to anything that's done. When it's finished, I'm like, props to you for making something. Now, if it's good, but double props, because it's like catching lightning in a bottle to really get something to be magical like that, to really resonate. Man, and you're right, editing is a thankless art, and you only notice it when it's bad. That's funny. When you said that, that kind of hit me, and I was like, that's so true, because I notice acting when it's bad. I notice but then, like you said, it might have been the editor that picked that take versus the proper performance, right? Because as an actor, you try to give everything you can, but sometimes you just can't fucking get there. And then there's one take that you felt like you got there.
Sometimes the actor just kind of sucks, and the editor did the best they could.
That's Isaac. Was that a little backhanded message to that's a more Isaac Gonzalez Johnson?
Tighten up, dog. Tighten up. Let's go. You gotta tighten up.
I was referring not I was referring not to the level of the films were being
tighten up.
I know. Part of my career.
For sure. Yeah. That's something else.
You take whatever projects you can.
Oh yeah, bro. Oh, for sure. That's something else that we spoke about in a previous episode with a buddy, is like, what's a good director to you? What's a good director for an actor? Versus directors that are not great. Like, I've had directors just say, "Hey, can you be more funny on this line?" And I'm like, well, I mean, what does that mean, bro? What does more funny mean? That's kind of like, can the water be a little more wet? I'm like, what, dog? I mean, like, water's wet already. Like, what? I don't quite understand what you're saying here, bro.
Tell me what I can do to be funnier.
Right. And I explained to George on this. I had the pleasure of being on Westworld. I was in the 3rd season of Westworld, and it was one of the most amazing sets I've ever been on, because at that level, it was one of the most free sets that I had ever been on, where you didn't feel like you needed to hit it that time. And I think that was on purpose, because even though we needed to hit it on that time, they gave the actors freedom to explore and roam. And the director gave me a note for one of the takes on how he wanted me to treat my scene partner. And he gave me a beautiful note, right? And so I did that. And the reason why he wanted me to do that was because the story was being told through my scene partner's perspective. So we needed to see my scene partner's reaction to how I was treating him, right? So if I didn't give my scene partner what he needed in order to react to that, the perspective and the story would have been much different than what the director wanted. But you see, that's a good director, knowing we need the story's being told through that guy's perspective. We need this guy to tell that guy something in this way in order to get the reaction to move the story forward. That is like understanding the road that we're going down, right? It's all just an intricate art. And again, you take what you get. I've been on sets that you see the final thing, and I have fallen asleep at movie premieres before that I was in. I'm not proud to say. And it's because you just take what you can at the beginning, dude. You just do what you got to do.
That's very true.
You just do what you got to do.
That's the challenge to come up, but then eventually you get to a reputable level, and then you get to deal with Isaacs on camera.
That's funny, bro.
And the movie becomes like number 2.
Yeah, it was such an unbelievable pleasure. That movie was, and it's funny. I'll tell you this right now. I got a couple quick anecdotes. First off, my grandmother passed away the first week of shooting That's Amore. And that was like a very sobering experience because this lady like helped raise me. I lived with my grandparents until I was 4. And then my parents, like my mom and my dad were always in my life, or my stepdad. And, you know, I lived with my grandparents till they got married, whatever. And then I moved in with them. And, that's a whole nother episode that we can get into. But anyways, my grandmother was a very integral part in who I was. So she passed away, and you know, the good thing was with COVID that all the funerals were getting pushed back. So my mom was like, finish a movie, it's fine, fly out after. I was like, okay. But I remember being on that set and just like looking around and having the sobering thought of the things that matter and didn't matter. But anyways, it was such a pleasure to be on that set because it was this moment of sobering, just acting and just trying to be as free as possible. So hearing you say that means a lot to me because it was a reminder that I'm kind of doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And then I wanted to bring back, going even more full circle. We were talking about rejection earlier a lot, like an hour and a half ago, and how rejection is redirection. That's what you said, was rejection is redirection. I was supposed to be background for Westworld, and I couldn't end up doing it. And if you're background on a show, you then cannot be principal. And principal means that you have speaking roles. So I ended up not doing it. I had an interesting interaction with a casting department person at some point in my life that they told me I should probably, and it had to do with background, but they said I should find a new career because I will never make it in this career because I couldn't do background work. I said, thank you for your opinion. I appreciate it. Have a nice day. I keep that shit in my hip pocket always to remind me of that. Fast forward a year and a half, 2 years later, I get a part on Westworld because if I would have been background, I would not have been able to be principal. I got a principal part on Westworld, and that was two episodes. That just goes back to the rejection is redirection. So I have a sort of, one of my last questions I want to ask you is, I know we've touched on it, but what redirection in your life, looking back on it right now, observationally, has put you where you are today? What are some of those big milestone markers for you?
That's a good question. Career-wise, well, I think the most pivotal thing for me was that breakup of 3 years. I wasn't the partner that she needed me to be. And when she left, I had the space to become the man that I was always supposed to be. And because of that, I have found a lot of success in terms of achieving my goals and moving forward towards the future that I envisioned for myself. So it was a painful rejection from my ex because I had been slacking. and men just have to step up and do man shit, you know? And I just hadn't grown up at that point, but I really grew up after that.
I think we all are relating to that right now. I think we're all like, that was like one of those moments.
Silence speaks volumes.
Silence speaks volumes. George, bring it home, bro.
All right, man. Well, it seems like we're coming to a beautiful end. I like to ask this question. You don't have to think too deep into it, or you can. The world is your oyster with this question. But the last question I have is if you can fill in the blanks. If you can pretty much finish the sentence. And it goes as, my name is Julian and I blank. Or it can be, my name is Julian and I am or I feel blank. So it can be kind of a very profound answer, or it can feel like, hey, I feel tired, or I feel happy, you know. So
I got you.
Yeah.
My name is Julian and I make magic happen.
Hey,
let's
go.
Ooh. That
Julian's a man's man.
Bro. I'm gonna speak for George as well right now. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday with us. This was an absolute honor to have you on. Very, very grateful. You know, you did us this favor by coming on. I feel a sense of growth. I really appreciate your candor, your being open, and everything that you've talked to us about. It means a lot, sharing your time with us. Thank you very much, bro. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Julian. We really appreciate it, man. Learned a lot, and hopefully whoever listens to this does as well.
Sharing some
pleasure,
cafecito.
Having me on, man.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
okay,
man.
before
Yeah,
we let you
cafecito.
go, where can people find you? If you want to share, you know, that's something that sometimes we forget to ask. So where can people find you on?
Good question. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is Emperor of Love. I always kind of blush when I say that name, but like my last name Habib in Arabic means sweetheart or love. And then my name Julian comes from a line of Roman emperors, the House of Julii. So I created Emperor of Love from that. It's quite literally my name.
That's dope.
So you can find me on Instagram as Emperor of Love all together, or on Facebook with my name, Julian Habib, Julian, last name Habib, Habib.
And we'll put all that info for you guys in the bio, section.
Show description.
All right.
It'll go in there.
There you
Bro,
go.
God bless you guys.
There you go.
Thank you
Thank
so much. Love to you both.
Thank you, Julian. It's not goodbye. See you later, man.
Amen.
Hell yeah.
See you on the
It's been a
mats.
pleasure.
See you on the mats.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm gonna hold you to that.
I know you are. I still
You say that to me.
I know,
You
bro.
say that to
I
me.
know. That's why I'm saying it, because I need some accountability. All right, let's cut this shit off before it keeps going.
It's on
Okay.
the record now. It's on the record now.
Love y'all, boys.
You gotta come through now.
All right.
This is the Cafe con Podcast.